On December 1st, 2023, I'm going to call to order the fourth quarter meeting of the State Fire Prevention and Building Code Council. My name, as always, apparently for my 30th meeting, is Matt Tebow, and I am serving as the designated chair of the council on behalf of Secretary of State Robert J. Rodriguez this morning. We have a busy day today. As soon as Kevin finishes his intro speech here, we're going to adopt the minutes of September 29th, 2023. We're going to hear from John Adario, who's going to do an update, as he always does. Kevin's going to talk to us about some MRLS submissions that we've received. We're then going to hop into the meat of our day, which is a code development update. Staff in both the Code Development Unit and the Energy Services Unit are going to walk through many different code books and talk about notable changes from the 2020 through the 2021 through the 2024. We're going to hear from Chris Corcoran at NYSERDA, who will talk about their cost methodology regulation that their board approved 2 days ago. And that will be going out for public comment. We will then have our own public comment session. I believe right now we have more than 40 people signed up for that. When we finish that, I'll briefly talk about future meetings, and then we will adjourn into an executive session to discuss pending litigation. Following that, I believe the board itself will have an ethics training that is required by statute every 3 years. And so that'll be our day. I'll try and fit, where it's most appropriate, we'll fit a break for lunch to catch our breaths. And I will try and take a little break between regular session and executive session so Kevin can get set up for that. So that's our day ahead. Kevin, please call the roll.
Matt Tebow.
I'm here.
James Cable.
Here.
Michael Weber.
Here.
Vincent Rappaciullo.
Here.
Joseph DeStefano.
Here.
Claudia Bramer.
Here.
Joseph Toomey.
Here.
Sean Hamlin.
Here.
Timothy DeRuscher.
Here.
Robert Hughes.
Here.
William Tyne. Buffalo, I'm going to unmute you.
No, it's unmuted.
Okay. Bill Tyne.
Here.
Here.
Dominic Marinelli.
Here. Here.
Michael Sabatino, New York City.
Here.
And Keith Wen.
Here.
Quorum is established with 14. 13 are in the room, and in one of the 3 rooms, and 1 is remote. Kevin?
So I'll just go over a couple of logistics. So if members not in attendance at the Albany location, please mute your microphones. If you want to speak, unmute and state your full name and then speak. At this time, we have 42 participants anticipated to give public comment today. Per typical, we'll limit the amount of time for each public comment to 3 minutes. And I've pasted the list of those who have signed up to speak remotely in the chat. If your name is not on that list, if you could write into the chat team or Chad Severs or myself and let us know that you need to be added to the list, and we'll collect some information and place you on the list.
Okay, Kevin, are there any agenda changes from what I just? Okay. Then we are on to agenda item 2. See, we're moving fast already. Draft minutes, for September 29th, 2023. This went out in your packets. Did anyone have any changes to the draft minutes? Okay. Hearing none, I'll make the motion to approve the draft minutes of September 29th, 2023. Can I have a second, please? Joe Toomey seconds. We're off to that. Off to our usual. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Okay. Hearing none, it's a voice vote. All in favor of approving the draft minutes of September 29th, 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are adopted. Great. Moving to agenda item number 3, division updates. Mr. Dario from his office on the 11th floor. John? You are muted, and now you're unmuted.
Good morning. I just have two things. First, I just wanted to provide the council with an update on one of the work groups that staff has been involved with. It's actually the Interagency Fire Safety Work Group on Energy Storage Systems. The work group was formed by the request of the governor as a result of 3 battery fires, storage system fires over the summer. One of the outcomes from the work group will be several recommendation changes to the New York State Fire Code dealing with energy storage systems. So they are coming out with a report in the beginning of 2024. Division staff has been involved and continues to work with the group to develop those changes into proposals that will be presented to the Code Council for consideration. And the intent would be that this would be included in the next code update. Several of the recommendations are actually from the 2024 IFC, or they're very similar. And just briefly, a couple of changes are updating the reference standard 855 to the 2023 version. If you remember when we did the emergency rule, the 2020 version of 855 wasn't available yet. So some of those provisions and that was what was incorporated in the emergency rule, which is currently in the part of those provisions in the IFC. So the other items will require a third-party review and annual inspections of energy storage systems, and then expand the signage requirements and possibly the ability to remote monitor some of the energy systems, among a few other changes. Again, some of those changes are from the 2024 code that we're looking at now. So we're hoping that if code language is ready, that we would be able to put that in as part of the rule and development. So I just wanted to let you know what was going on that front. And then just as a reminder, the micromobility work group recommendations also includes what's in the 2024 code. And that would be similar to what's exactly what's in the 2024 at this point, and would also be something that they have made recommendations for adoption by the Code Council. So as the work group continues, I'll keep you updated. The other item is ICC code development process. As I mentioned in the past, we have several staff members that have been appointed to ICC code development committees. And as we've done in the past, we are proposing some changes to the 2024 code to make up the 2027 code. So those hearings are in the beginning of April. The deadline for proposals is sometime in January. So I believe we're thinking maybe about half a dozen to a dozen code change proposals that we'll be submitting to those. So that is all I have for now. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Any questions for John? Okay. Hearing none, jumping to Kevin to provide us an update on MRLS submissions. Kevin.
Okay, so we have the town of Goshen flood provisions were received and are still under review. We did meet with the town and DEC to discuss any outstanding questions, and staff will continue their review and get the staff analysis to the co-council members. As requested by the co-council at the March 2023 meeting, we are currently working with the town of Farmington on their local law that was voted down at the March meeting, and they did submit a draft local law recently for review, so that's under review by staff. And then yesterday we received an MRLES petition that is accordingly not ready for today's meeting, but it is under review by the Energy Code Unit.
Okay. Are there any questions on those? Okay. Agenda item number 4, Uniform Code and Energy Code Development Updates. Kevin's gonna do an intro and then he's gonna pass to staff, and we're probably gonna be at this for a good half an hour or so, I would encourage, maybe if you have questions, they're gonna be running through sort of that document that you received, the notable changes document, they're gonna highlight some of the things. If you have questions, probably good to just jump in as they move through it, so that we don't get too far beyond what they say when your question gets raised. All right, Kevin.
All right. So as discussed at the September meeting, division staff anticipates providing a version 3.0 code development documents for the Uniform Code and the Energy Code no earlier than the March 2024 meeting. Staff continues to work diligently on developing the necessary language to produce a first draft of the proposed changes for the 24 Uniform Code and Energy Code. September, I think if everyone remembers, I went through and documented in detail all of the topics that were being developed in that version 3.0. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through and read all of them again. It was just approved in the meeting minutes by the Code Council, as well as the video for the last meeting has been posted to the department's YouTube channel. So for this meeting, staff has prepared a summary of documents that was included in the members' packet and posted to the public notice. The documents summarize the notable changes to the 21 and 24 International Code Council model code books that are typically used as the baseline to develop the Uniform Code. And
Kevin, can you just speak up a little bit? The
Yeah.
HVAC is.
Yep, sorry. So today, basically, we'll be presenting just changes to the 21 and 24 codes based on ICC approved changes. The presentation that we have today is just Uniform Code books and just 21 and 24 iCode changes. The 2024 IECC has yet to be finalized or published, and there's no significant change documents for the Energy Code, as the Energy Code document doesn't exist yet. It'd be premature to prepare a similar notable changes document until we get those finalized changes. The Uniform Code document can be used in conjunction with the latest version 2.0 documents that were provided at the June and September meeting for the Code Council, and it will help to provide a high-level overview of the notable items from the 21 and 24 ICC code development process. Just a little bit of disclaimer as to what these documents are. It's the information contained in the document is based on staff's review of the ICC published documents only and does not include any New York State statutory requirements or other policies and initiatives of the Code Council in the state. This document should not be construed as recommendations by the Department of State for provisions to be adopted by the Code Council, but rather a summary of the notable changes within 2021 and 2024 ICC model codes currently under review by staff for consideration. We have several staff members, including myself, that will give just brief presentations today. We have Jeannie Rice and Chad Sievers. I have split up some of the books, and I have the property maintenance code. So for the property maintenance code, there overall, as you can imagine, there's not a lot of changes in the property maintenance code. It's one of the smallest books that we have. However, some of the changes, I have 4 changes that I'll just review quickly, several of which are a direct result of division staff working with ICC, as well as even members on the Code Council to develop changes that we got approved at the ICC level. So that's, it's good to hear that our changes at the New York State level are being incorporated into the ICC code books. So the first one is one that we worked with Dominic specifically on, and we added requirements for maintenance of accessible facilities, requiring accessible features to be maintained in good repair at all times during occupancy. These provisions ensure the existing accessibility level of buildings will be maintained at any point during occupancy. The next one that was done by staff was to minimize, the minimum room areas for habitable rooms has been standardized to 70 square feet for all types of habitable rooms. This is a reduction from 120 square feet, which was previously required for living rooms, but helps to resolve a discrepancy between the property maintenance code, the residential code, and the building code. The next one was requirements for maintaining of community storm shelters were added, including requirements for annual condition evaluations. And the last one was requirements were added for maintenance of elevators in private residences, including requirements to comply with ASME 17.1 and ASME 17.3, which are the safety requirements for new and existing elevators and escalators. So I think with that, remind me, I forget which one of you was going to go first, but either Chad or Jeannie's going to step up.
Oh, but first, does anybody have any questions on that? So for the building code, the 21-24 changes. Mass timber is now specifically defined, and it's represented in both large wood buildings, elements of historically recognized heavy timbers, which is the type 4 heavy timber construction. We've now introduced 3 different types: type 4A, type 4B, and type 4C. All 3 of those building types are what's kind of recognized as the heavy timber type. The modifications to the tables of allowable height in feet, allowable height in stories. The fire resistant rating of different building elements is also another requirement. The allowable building area and the exterior wall rating. Mass timbers that separate occupants from type 4B and type 4C construction will be protected with gypsum. A new section was added to address fire protection of structural connections. Concealed spaces are now permitted in the floor and roof deck of type 4 HT. Heavy timber, that's the traditional one. And sections were added to ensure that safety of buildings constructed under the new construction types. There are a new subject. Many accessible provisions have been added to the IBC, including provisions and regulations for sizing requirements for accessible water closets, including the actual water closet itself, grab bars, flush controls, dispenser, roll-in showers, and other clearances, etc. Sections were added for facilities which include electrical vehicle charging stations as part of the accessibility requirement. And the assisted living and nursing home provisions were modified to allow some units to have toilet and bathing facilities designed for assisted use instead of independent use generally intended by ICC A117.1 accessibility unit provisions. Another change is the standard strength design load and allowable stress design load combination for equations have been removed from the IBC. Instead, we're directing directly to ASC 7. Related to that, load combinations included in the previous version of the IBC were based on ASC 7 load combinations. Removing this from the IBC reduces the chance for transcription errors. The load combinations found in ASC 7-22 differ from the load combinations found in ASC 7-16. These differences between the load combinations exist because the method of calculating wind and snow load changed between the two standards. Wind and snow loads in ASC 7 are the ultimate strength design loads, whereas these loads were allowable stress design loads in ASC 7. The changes in load factors reflect that the change in nature of the loads and should represent more accurate loading based on more recent data. Design loads were revised and expanded. These modifications include provisions for the use of tornado design loads were added, which were not previously included. The snow loads have been updated to match the new snow load maps in ASC 7-22. The maps were developed using more recent weather data. Previous versions were based on maps from before 1990. The new maps removed most of the case study required areas that are found in New York. And investigation is underway to determine if these new maps can be utilized in lieu of developing New York State specific map as we have historically done. Additionally, the new maps were developed using ultimate strength design loads instead of allowable stress design loads, which were in the previous maps. In comparison to the current New York State specific map, snow loads in most areas have increased, though the amount of increase varies by area. The wind load maps have been updated, again using recent weather data. The update has resulted in a slightly lower wind speed in most inland areas, with little change to the coastal areas for New York State. The rain load calculations were updated to include ponding loads, New rain load maps were included to coordinate with the ASC 7 also, and the same with seismic loads. An appendix to the IBC was added, detailed requirements of sleeping lofts, which are open to the room below. They give a minimum area, a minimum ceiling height, and a means of egress requirements, which can be a problem in those situations. A section detailing the responsibilities of building owners for the fire protection during construction was added. A written safety plan, a site fire safety detector, and daily fire safety inspections. And that is it for the IBC. Jeannie has the IRC.
So,
Hold on, Sean. I have a
Question, you mentioned the mass timbers and the change in the fire resistant rating requirement table. Could you mind give us a little teaser as some of those changes?
do you want me to take this?
Yeah.
So basically, they've added a couple different construction types under heavy timber. So some of the changes to the tables are just adding those construction types into the table so that they also exist. And then there were extensive fire tests done on mass timber, and so they've made a couple of changes based on the findings from those fire tests as well.
So the hourly resistant ratings are being evaluated and will be a part of this table?
Let's see,
So-
for the fire resistance rating requirements for building elements, yes.
So there's 3 new types. Type 4A is buildings with structural elements protected with non-combustible protection. Type 4B, buildings with structural elements mostly protected with non-combustible protection. So I think that's like the mass timber is not protected, but the roof, the slabs made of the heavy timber roof material would be protected. I believe that's the situation. And type 4C, buildings with most structural elements left unprotected. So that's all the wood exposed, but it still allows for the extra wood to be consumed during fire, which should still give it enough structure.
To withstand, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead with changes to the International Residential Code. Changes include the snow, wind, and seismic load maps and provisions were updated to match ASC 722, similar to the IBC. The new figures are based on more recent data than the previous figures. Design tables throughout the IRC have been updated as well to match the new snow and wind loads. Seismic load figures have been updated to match ASC 722. For most of New York State, though, seismic loads are very similar to or slightly less than those in the 2020 code. Habitable attics have been clarified as counting as a story above grade plane unless they meet the requirements of the exception, which includes a floor area of less than 50% of the floors below. This clarification is intended to coordinate the IBC and IRC views on habitable attic spaces such that both codes designate them as a story above grade plane. Provisions for sleeping lofts were added. Sleeping lofts are limited in area and open to the living room below. The new requirements include maximum minimum areas, minimum ceiling heights, and means of egress provisions. Energy storage system provisions have been extensively updated, including provisions for construction of enclosures, size of equipment, fire protection, labeling, documentation, and vehicle impact protection. Requirements for guards, i.e. safety railings, on exterior decks were provided. Prior to the 2021 IRC, requirements for guards on exterior decks were not included. Many residential decks are located far above grade, with some even reaching the second story, so guards on such decks are necessary to protect the occupants. Provisions for A2L refrigerants were added. A2L refrigerants have a lower global warming potential than traditional refrigerants, but are mildly flammable, so different requirements are necessary for these refrigerants. ASHRAE 15.2, Safety Standards for Refrigeration Systems, is incorporated by reference, and compliance with a number of UL standards are also required. Requirements were added for an exterior emergency electrical service disconnect and installation of a surge protection device in the electrical service panel. Radon testing provisions were added to the appendix on radon control methods, requiring testing in all structures which are required to be radon resistant and detailing testing procedures and locations. 5 new appendices were added to the IRC. Unless otherwise noted, the content is under review and no determination has yet been made on whether or not to recommend them. There's an appendix on cob, monolithic adobe construction. Cob is a natural material made of clay, sand, and straw, which is hand sculpted onto a foundation to form monolithic building walls. An appendix specifying procedures for the Board of Appeals were added. The board described in this appendix is similar to the New York State Regional Boards of Review. Since we've got requirements for the New York State Boards of Review already, it's anticipated that this appendix will not be recommended for approval. An appendix on 3D printed building construction was added. 3D printed building techniques typically involve using a cement mix to print the building structure in layers. An appendix detailing requirements for extended plate wall construction was added. Extended plate wall construction is a type of construction utilizing dimensional lumber and is well suited for residential construction. Walls are constructed using 2x6 plates and 2x4 studs, with the interior face of the plate aligned with the interior face of the stud, leaving room for 2 inches of rigid foam insulation on the exterior side. Utilizing this type of construction, high R-value walls can be constructed with continuous foam insulation in the same footprint as a traditional 2x6 wall. And lastly, an appendix containing requirements for hemp line or hempcrete construction in non-structural or wall infill uses was added. A hempcrete is made from hemp stalk cores and limestone binder and can be cast in place or molded into brick-like blocks for use as a non-structural building material. The R value of hempcrete can exceed that of the same thickness fiberglass bat insulation and can be used similarly as stud and joist cavity insulation. So, any questions on that?
Just have one. So I'm clear. What we're given on this today is specifically changes from the 2018, 2020, and 24, just the ICC. Nothing comparing to what we have currently in New York State, correct?
I mean, you guys, staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but everything that you're presenting as a notable change would be a change from what is already in New York State.
But specific
based
here
on-
is the ICC.
Right, specifically
What has
just,
occurred with their changes from their code books, which is in the 2024. So there's nothing in here pertaining to what we might adopt from different, just New York State ones, correct?
Right.
So, and the only other question I had is, for instance, on habitable attics, determining that to be a story is critical with fire sprinklers. Do we have an idea how that will be affected if New York State adopts fire sprinklers? The house new construction has to be automatically sprinkled. How does it work with the determination of that being a story? It would be, I would think, wouldn't matter. So I'm just kind of curious how the transition, it seems to be pretty critical on the fire sprinkler end of New York State. I'm sorry if I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here. That adoption could affect a lot of the wording, correct? The fire sprinkler would adjust a lot of things in the code books.
yeah, I mean, I know we still have to work on integrating how it would impact typical New York State changes that we make, bringing in something like sprinklers. So I don't know if we have an exact answer to how it would impact stories, but great.
But that's what I'm saying, so I just wonder, when we're reviewing this for the whole code, you're looking specifically that ICC already has fire sprinklers in it. So you're looking at an adjustment just on a book that is not completely at all particular to New York State just yet. This is just giving us a grasp of codes changes from the ICC. I just maybe should be bearing in mind that it's helpful probably if you're looking at the New York State current code to kind of understand that probably would bring up a question to say, well, how will this actually matter to what we're going to do in New York State, whereas it's not necessarily tied into what's actually specific what we'll be getting as opposed to just what's actually happening in ICC. Sorry if I dragged on.
No worries, Robert. No, you make an excellent point, Robert. I mean, we have a code where we're going to be shifting some things, and when we shift some things, even if we're going back to what ICC had, we have to adjust the other changes that were made to accommodate that change in the first place. That's why these guys are head down most of the time. So
Hence why it takes a lot of time.
hence why it takes a lot of time.
Better to take the time now
Then try and
to
fix
get it right.
Yes, absolutely.
Any other questions on the IRC? All right, so moving to the IFC, the International Fire Code. So some of the changes the ICC have been making is they introduced valet trash. This is also supported with an additional appendix into the back of the IFC. The threshold for alcoholic beverages is going from 16 to 20%. This may affect some of the wine storage in the Finger Lakes and other wine areas. As one big change is it will cause storage of the alcohol to go from an F2 to a F1 facility. Section 319 has been modified to further clarify the requirements concerning food trucks, primarily focused on fuel systems and suppression systems. We added language in the IFC to address 3D printers, as that's becoming a common building, not building use, not building construction method for this one. There's minor requirements for non-industrial 3D printers, such as home use. And there's in-depth requirements for industrial 3D printers, which will regulate a multitude of hazards. Artificial combustion, combustible vegetation is now regulated. When it's located on roofs or within close proximity to the building, we've seen this as some hazards in different areas of the country. The charging of micromobility devices is addressed as John discussed earlier. Some of the changes will be requiring listings, separation requirements, and the use of detection systems. Section 403 and 405 have been updated to adjust fire safety evacuation plan details, have been added for Group 1 or Group I occupancies and lithium-ion facilities. These changes will require participation for certain occupants and provide additional clarification when staff will be trained. The provisions of Chapter 5 have updated the emergency responder communication enhancement systems. These have been improved to capture the latest technology being used for these systems, including the use and reference of NFPA 1225. Chapter 6 added labeling and limit requirements on power taps, otherwise known as power strips. Also in Section 610, closed dryer exhaust systems were further addressed. Automatic sprinkler systems in that section have been enhanced to include requirements for sprinklers for mechanical parking garages, special amusement areas, distilled spirits, lithium-ion and metal battery storage, record storage over 12 feet tall, and energy storage systems. The requirements for smoke-proof enclosures have been added to Section 909. Section 915 of the Model Code covers carbon monoxide detection. And the recent revisions to the section appear to meet the requirements of Section 378 of our executive law. So we are looking at that to determine if we can adopt it or not, instead of separate, New York specific 915. As rooftops become more desirable amenity space, the code has added provisions to enhance egress from buildings with occupiable rooftops by requiring elevators for buildings greater than 3 stories, two-way communication, doorway clearances that will comply with A117.1, basically allowing for wheelchairs. The requirement in Section 1010 have had a maximum door width removed and introduced a minimum door width for saunas and similar hygiene-related areas. Chapter 12, a large number of changes to address the quickly changing energy storage industry. The revisions incorporate NFPA 855 as provisions for the hazard mitigation based on best practices. We're also, we're waiting on the recommendations from the work group. There's also in Chapter 12, there's provisions related to PV installations and building integrated PV. hazards associated with the research and storage and manufacturing of lithium-ion battery technologies is addressed through fire protection systems. Hazards associated with charging micro-mobility devices are also addressed, including listings, separation requirements, and use of detection systems. Concerns with facilities to produce combustible dust have been addressed in Chapter 22 with requirements to address the critical layer requirement, signage, identifying ignition sources, training, general housekeeping, and emergency response plans. In Chapter 31, inflatable amusement devices are being addressed. In Chapter 33, the requirements for construction safety have been increased. Daily inspections are one item, defining a site safety plan and contents, requirements for mass timber type 4 construction, and requiring provisions for type 1 and type 2 areas. For type 1 and type 2 areas that are under construction, it clarifies some of the separation requirements. And this also clarifies water supply requirements during construction. In facilities that extract compound from plants, the fire code has implemented modifications to reduce the hazard by requiring lighting to meet UL standards, requiring monitoring of CO2, and improved ventilation requirements in those spaces. In the chapter discussing the storage of distilled spirits and wine, are reducing hazards by also regulating ventilation, signage, introducing sprinklers, and additional storage requirements. In Chapter 50, for the hazardous materials, the table of exemptions was added to Chapter 50. The exemption applies to approximately 20 items that are meeting other requirements or are in retail packaging containers, which pose a reduced risk. Chapter 50 also introduces the Category 1B flammable gas. And in the back of the IFC, they added an appendix, which includes a kind of a cheat sheet table to go from the IFC to the global harmonization system. That's it. Any questions?
Yeah. On the alcohol storage, what's the threshold on that? Your mom and pop restaurant's not going to be affected by that, or
I am not certain off the top of my head. I'll have to check on that for you.
like microbreweries and things like that. So
Yeah, so I think it's going to be more effective of the type of, if it's a storage facility occupancy, or if it's a factory that produces it. I don't really know off the top of my head, but I'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right. Then I will continue with the international existing building code changes. Accessibility requirements were added to a number of sections, including provisions for accessibility during construction, toilet and bathing facilities, means of egress, elevators, and sleeping areas. These requirements were added as a result of a DOS change proposal that got approved during the ICC process. Changes were made to clarify how risk categories should be assigned for structural design in situations where an addition and an existing building have different uses or occupancy types, including provisions on what situations would it result in an increase in risk category. Requirements were added to several sections for occupiable roof areas created by additions or alterations to comply with the requirements for new construction. Requirements were added for subdividing stories into smoke compartments when a certain number of additional sleeping unit facilities are constructed in I1 and I2 occupancies during additions or alterations. Under the requirements for new construction in I2 occupancies, any stories containing patient care, treatment, or sleeping rooms must be subdivided into smoke compartments. These provide refuge areas for patients to shelter in during fire emergencies. The requirements for adding smoke compartments to existing buildings will ensure that such refuge areas exist on floors which are modified to include a significant number of sleeping units. Required locations for adult changing stations have been added to coordinate with the IBC provisions. Accessibility provisions for adult changing stations were also added. Adult changing stations are a valuable accessibility feature for special needs adults and their caregivers, providing a safe and sanitary changing environment for all persons. The required locations align with the findings of the DOS/OGS February 2019 report on adult changing stations, though the ICC requirements do not include all locations recommended in the report. Requirements were added for building owners to, during construction, properly develop and implement and maintain site safety plans. The site safety director must be designated and is responsible to conduct daily fire safety inspections. And then 2 new appendices were added to the IEBC, a Board of Appeals appendix similar to the IRC, and a appendix containing provisions for the temporary emergency use of existing buildings, such as was done during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. The appendix provides guidance for such temporary emergency use as well as other temporary emergency usages such as disaster relief shelters. Content is under review and no determination has been yet made on whether or not to recommend it. So, any changes on, questions on the IEBC before I go on? All right, I'll continue to the plumbing code. Changes include several occupancy subtypes were added to the minimum number of required plumbing facilities and fixtures table, including ambulatory care facilities, assisted living facilities, and congregate living facilities. So this is the table that specifies the required number of water closets, lavatories, and other plumbing fixtures as per number of occupants in particular occupancy types. Requirements for installing tracer wire with non-metallic and water and sewer piping were added. So this would be for when piping is buried underground. It's usually located using conductive properties of metal piping, but when you're using non-metallic piping, then you need tracer wire laid along the pipe. Requirements for sewer and drain piping relining and sectional cure-in-place rehabilitation were added. Relining is a cost-effective method of pipe rehabilitation to fix leaks, deteriorated areas of piping, and other piping issues. It consists of inserting a flexible tube into existing pipes, which is inflated to conform to the existing pipe, and then cured in place. This method does not require excavation or finish removal to expose existing piping for replacement, thus providing considerable cost savings. So any questions on the plumbing code? All right, on to the mechanical code. Minimum ventilation rates were added for animal care facilities, education facilities, outpatient healthcare facilities, laundry facilities, manufacturing facilities, and other assorted occupancy subtypes. The update coordinates the ventilation rates table with ASHRAE 62.1 2019 version, which is the source for this table. Requirements for manicure pedicure stations to have continuous exhaust systems during hours of operation were added. Manicure pedicure stations present a number of potential inhalation health hazards, and exhaust systems are necessary to ensure adequate air quality. However, manual operation of the exhaust systems was found to not ensure adequate air quality, since operators often turn the fans off due to noise issues. Requiring continuous operation while the business is open ensures that exhaust fans will be operational whenever they are necessary. This requirement will be coordinated with DOS Division of Licensing for nail salons. And then provisions for A2L refrigerants were added, similar to was mentioned previously. They have the lower global warming potential, but are mildly flammable. So provisions for fire protection and provisions for changing refrigerants in existing systems were added. And ASHRAE 15.2 is incorporated by reference. So any questions on the mechanical code? All right, last one. Fuel gas code, there's not much here. It's a very small book. So press connect joints were added to the list of permitted joints in high pressure indoor applications for gas systems. Requirements for residential and non-residential fueling appliances were added. Provisions include maximum capacities and installation requirements. Clearance requirements were added for gas clothes dryers, exhaust terminations. And revisions were made throughout to coordinate with NFPA 5421 edition, the National Fuel Gas Code Handbook. So any questions on that?
It's not on that one particularly, but I did have a question earlier about the CNG being expanded to not just the residential facilities for vehicle use. I was wondering if there is a study showing the reason behind expanding it to other locations.
I believe that we would have to check into that and get back to you.
Okay,
So
thank you.
we'll look into it.
So that completes the recitation. Are there any questions globally before we move to NYSERDA and Mr. Corcoran? Okay. Chris just turned his video on. I see him. There he is. Chris, I believe you have a slideshow. We're going to attempt to give you access so you can display that slideshow.
All right. Hopefully you can see that. You
It's
can
behind
confirm.
us, so I think they can see it.
All right, great. Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Corcoran, and I lead the Codes, Products, and Standards team at NYSERDA. Want to just start off by thanking you all for taking the time today to discuss the proposed rule from NYSERDA around the criteria for determining the cost effectiveness for the Energy Code. As you all know, this is a critical step for the Energy Code update process. So today we'll touch on a little bit of background, talk through the rule itself, and then also discuss some of the public meetings and comments that we received. So before we get into the details, I want to just set a little bit of foundation on these proposed actions. As you all know, the Codes and Standards Act of 2022 directed NYSERDA to develop and adopt a rule that establishes a life cycle cost methodology for Energy Code updates and to define societal effects associated with those Energy Code updates. This proposed rule will help you, the Code Council, provide a better and more robust view of the costs and benefits related to a proposed Energy Code update in this cycle as well as in the future cycles. Okay. As we look ahead over the next couple of years, this timeline identifies some of the important milestones, both in the NYSERDA rulemaking process on the top half, as well as the rulemaking process that the Department of State and the Code Council will be going through to update the Energy Code. As Matt mentioned, our NYSERDA board approved the proposed rule earlier this week, and we will be publishing it in late December or early January in the State Register. That's going to open up a 60-day public comment period as part of the SAPA process, and we expect to finalize that rule in June and have it published in July 2024, set to take effect. So from there, that's the point where the Department of State and the Code Council can move forward with their official and your official SAPA rulemaking process as part of the Notice of Proposed Rule on the Energy Code. Of course, all of that timing is subject to change, so that's just an estimate of where we are right now. Now that we've talked about background, let's jump into the rule itself. So at its core, this rule is about how to determine the cost effectiveness of a new energy code. As I mentioned earlier, the Code Council will consider whether an update to the Energy Code is cost effective by applying this life cycle cost methodology and also considering the secondary and societal effects. Because this rule is using net present values to consider future costs and savings, the Energy Code update can be presumed to be cost effective when the sum of life cycle costs and the value of societal effects is greater than or equal to 0. Getting into a little bit more detail here, there's really 3 key components to the rule itself. First is the life cycle cost methodology. So life cycle cost methodology, as noted here, is based on the U.S. Department of Energy methodology that's used nationally to determine the cost effectiveness of the model codes, for the model energy codes. This methodology calculates impacts of proposed changes to the Energy Code over a 30-year study period. It does make specific New York adjustments that to account for things like New York climate zones, construction forecasts, energy prices, construction costs, interest and average interest rates. In terms of the societal effects, this is really built on the Department of Environmental Conservation's establishing a value of carbon and guidelines for a state agency. So NYSERDA is proposing that the societal effects will be defined as monetized value of greenhouse gas emissions resulting from reductions in changes to fuel and electricity consumption due to an energy code change. The last piece of the rule that's key is the cost effectiveness presumption. So as we talked about previously, as I mentioned previously, an energy code change would be presumed to be cost effective if the sum of the life cycle costs and the value of the societal effects is greater than or equal to 0. Getting into just a bit more detail on these, and for those of you that have read the proposed code, you'll know that there's a whole lot more information in there about how to use and apply the life cycle costs and the methodology and the societal effects. So this slide really gets into a bit more of that detail. For the life cycle cost methodology, we're proposing to use computer simulated building models that represent projected new construction starts across New York State during the next code cycle. The incremental energy savings will be calculated by comparing proposed energy code to existing requirements. And incremental costs will be developed using those same models with comparisons for costs such as initial construction, mortgage, maintenance, and replacement. The energy cost savings and costs are projected out over a 30-year time horizon, and the net present value of calculated savings and costs are summed to determine energy cost savings. On the societal effects side, again, these are defined as the avoided greenhouse gas emissions, which are then quantified into dollars. Emissions factors will be applied to incremental energy savings to calculate emissions impacts of a proposed energy code. And the dollar value of avoided greenhouse gas emissions are then calculated on an annual basis for the 30-year study period, according to DEC's guidelines. So moving along, also want to touch on the public meetings and the feedback that we received during those meetings. So as required by energy law, NYSERDA held public meetings across the state and virtually in advance of this rulemaking. This was with a goal of discussing the proposal and getting meaningful feedback from impacted and disadvantaged communities. These meetings were a preliminary step in developing this rule, and will continue, as part of the SAPA process when we move forward. Overall, the comments expressed support for this move and really focused on supporting the more nuanced cost effectiveness approach over the previous 10-year simple payback analysis. But there were some suggestions that were and suggested adjustments that were noted. 4 main themes that we heard in those comments were one, about increasing the value of societal benefits and reducing costs included in the life cycle cost methodology. 2, increasing life cycle costs related to electrification. 3, providing transparency on costs, discount factors, weather models, and carbon values. And then 4, questions on perceived impacts on existing buildings. So all the comments that were submitted in both the public meetings as well as virtually were all reviewed and considered as part of this process. And in response to these comments, the proposed rule addressed several key issues. So among those, first off, is the rule identifies all instances where evaluation criteria differs from the DOE model. And so again, as I mentioned earlier, that's things like climate zones, construction forecasts, labor and material costs, energy prices, and average interest rates. The proposed rule also specifies that the baseline for building model analysis is going to be the energy code as well as other legal requirements. And those legal requirements will include things like the phase out of fossil fuel equipment and systems that is required under both executive and energy laws. In addition, property taxes were removed given their limited impact on energy efficiency on property assessments. And then lastly, there's a presumption that energy code updates for existing buildings will be cost effective if new construction is shown to be cost effective. So as we mentioned, the rule will be published. The proposed rule will be published in the state register late December or early January. The 60-day public comment period will open at that point, and we encourage everybody participating here today to review and provide comments during that comment period. And then, as we noted before, we'll continue to work with you, the Code Council, as well as the team at Department of State through the rest of the update, energy code update process. I also do want to note here that we've been working very closely with the team at Department of State to finalize a series of proposals for both the Advanced Energy Code as well as updates to the Uniform Code that can support the Climate Act. So those are still in process. We look forward to discussing them at a future meeting, and we will be, as I said, we'll be back to get into those in more detail down the road. But now I want to open it up to the council for any questions. Happy to tackle those.
Mike? Actually, I apologize, not a question, but I just wanted to, on behalf of HCR, thank NYSERDA for all of the outreach and partnership and coordination that has gone into the policy-making process thus far. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lonnie?
Thanks. Not necessarily a question either. I mean, I think NYSERDA has done a really good job of public outreach and trying to get people involved. I did listen in to most of the board meeting the other day, and there were a lot of questions from their board members about making sure that societal effects of dealing with the impacts of the climate crisis were adequately addressed in this calculation. I think that at least one of the board members was really adamant about adding more consideration there, and also using a different discount rate on the calculation to make sure that we're really including everything that we possibly could on that side of the equation. But in the end, NYSERDA, the board did not make any changes to what they're proposing. So it looks like it's a pretty conservative approach. I mean, maybe they could have been doing more, but I guess my question for council is, from the Code Council's perspective, we are not doing anything necessarily with respect to what NYSERDA is proposing for the life cycle cost analysis, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We're using the methodology once we are evaluating our proposed energy goals.
After they go through their formal rulemaking process, that's the methodology we
Correct.
will
Once it's
we'll be
finalized.
using. But at this point, it's their calculation, it's not ours to be weighing in on our changing.
Well, you can have comments.
Yeah, it's a rule, it's,
Of
they're
course, yeah.
establishing the methodology by rulemaking.
Right.
So,
Right.
public comment period.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there'll be the typical SAPA 60-day public comment period, which anyone can submit comments.
It won't be in our hands until they adopt it, which is sometime in mid.
It sounds like July 2024 is when they're shooting for.
But if they're, I think, I don't know if Chris said that today, but they're looking at it, and it seems like as we're incorporating the new energy changes that they're finding it's already at a net zero cost. So what we will potentially be proposing down the road will satisfy that requirement that it is a net zero cost.
Chris,
You know what I'm saying? You're shaking your head, Chairman.
I'm watching Chris shake his head, so I'm wondering if Chris wants to respond to that, or he wants me to respond to that. Chris?
I'm happy to take an initial stab at that. Yes, our initial analysis showed that the Advanced Energy Code that increases efficiency on buildings and lines up with the goals of the Climate Act can be cost effective under this analysis.
So that, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is even under a conservative approach from the side of looking at all of the societal impacts of the climate crisis, we're still going to be able to do the cost effectiveness, that's the word, cost effectiveness under the Advanced Energy Code. So maybe we could even go farther with our Advanced Energy Code down the road. Of course, we're gonna look at this again in 3 years, we, the council, and I think what I understood from the NYSERDA meeting is that they will also be re-evaluating the calculation in another 3-year period. So this cost benefit analysis calculation that NYSERDA is putting in place now and that we'll be using in this go around may change by the time we go to update the code again in 3 years or whenever the next update is.
That's correct. We'll update it in advance of each code cycle and relook at it just to make sure that it still makes sense and see if there are any other additional pieces of the methodology or societal effects that need to be updated and added.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else for Chris? Oh, I see Bill. Bill's waving. Bill Tyne, you are. He's also muted. When he starts to speak, it'll move him to the big screen.
It's not, it's unmuted.
Can you unmute?
Yep, that's right. All right, Buffalo, I unmuted you.
Nope, and then he
And
remuted
you remuted.
himself.
Thank you. You can hear me now.
We can.
I feel like a Verizon commercial. Thank you.
Well done getting my attention.
My concern is that, and it's certainly going forward, but even now, this life cycle analysis, everything is comparing post-electrification. You're comparing electrified codes to electrified codes. It doesn't seem as though, and you certainly will be doing that going forward when it's implemented into law. But right now, that's not the law. So the cost advantages have to do with energy savings down the road compared to the extra cost of implementing the code changes to the building. And then you have all kinds of things that disregard the complexities of an economy and how those issues impact the societal impacts. So when you start saying we're going to go down this road and it's a consumer who buys a home that's all electrified and is following the new energy codes is going to have a benefit in lower energy costs over time that will offset the additional expenses of construction, and those are going to be zero when it's electrified versus electrified. But it is certainly not the case if it is a fossil fuel connected home to an unconnected home, and so 100% electrified. It discounts the issue of property taxes. So when you build a house and it costs more, the assessed valuation of that house costs more, and the property tax burden to the homeowner is forever more expensive. When you take, and that's one of my problems with these programs, is they're focused on new construction. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. The easiest place for us to hit is new construction. It costs too much to retrofit existing homes, so they get a pass, and in fact, to try to incentivize them to implement changes, we're going to give them tax incentives and breaks for existing homes to implement these programs, but new construction will be burdened with additional costs and a higher property tax load for the occupants forever. And that is not factored, nor is what I'm experiencing right now. When you try to put in a development and you apply for your underground utilities and you want to put them in, I've mentioned this in the past, but if I have a natural gas utility that wants to be put in, I put in those facilities at my expense for the utility company. And I get my money back incrementally as I give them a customer. I'm the one bringing customers to their franchise. They profit off of it, but it's my expense because the Public Service Commission doesn't want to burden the end user with higher utility costs. They don't mind burdening them with a higher home cost. That's not factored at all. So I put that in so the burden isn't in on a multinational energy company. And then I get my money back incrementally, lot by lot by lot, but only if I give them a customer within 5 years. After that, I forfeit my money. And so now, with electrification looming, the gas company wants me to put in gas lines, but I'm gonna have by the time I build a house in a development next year, I'm gonna have a year and a half before I am prohibited from connecting to the utilities. There's no provisions for grandfathering that I'm aware of yet. So that means I'm gonna forfeit 3.5 years of reimbursements that I'm supposed to get if I put gas in. If I don't, and I go all electric, now, ahead of the law, I burden my consumers with those costs, but I have another problem. Right now, I cannot even get designs from the electric utilities on what to put in the ground. They don't know how they're gonna handle the loads. They don't know how they're gonna get transformers that have higher loads to serve, so every transformer is gonna serve fewer homes. They're gonna need a higher density of transformer loads now. They don't even know how to tell me how many crossings to put in for a road I'm building right now, and I get reimbursed for the crossings, but I can't get a design out of them right now. So all of those issues, as they're looking at what to do, have yet to be ferreted out. And you're not discussing the impact of the problem they have right now is how do we provide that power, because the grid hasn't been improved. You're just saying build the homes this way. But if I can't get power, I can't build the houses. If I'm not building the houses, what's the economic, societal impact? Because it's a simplistic evaluation to just say, well, here's the property tax dollars we take in, here's the public money we spend providing public services, and it ignores whether a new development subsidizes old developments that need heavier maintenance and operational costs. It ignores the fact that every sector of the economy benefits from the development of new neighborhoods and new construction. And those people move in. They're the ones that are the consumers that support every sector of the economy. So we have an economic evaluation that's required of these rules under SEEKR, but it doesn't seem as though to me that economic, because SEEKR isn't just simply an environmental analysis. SEEKR is a social, economic, environmental, all of these factors are to be weighed and balanced before you make a SEEKR determination, and all of that's being ignored. It's just we're going right down the road of saying develop and put the codes in place to build this way, ignoring whether or not we have built an infrastructure network that can serve those requirements. And if you shut down the economy of development, you're shutting down the economy of every other sector of the state economy. The state right now has already identified that as an issue. They've already said we have a shortage of housing, we have an affordability issue. We're building and creating jobs and moving people into the state, but we don't have places where people can move into homes. So what are we going to do to fix that, to make it more affordable for people and to build more and build it faster? And by getting the cart out in front of the horse, we're creating a situation where we're going to cut ourselves off at the knees. We're not going to be able to build all these homes. You won't be able to get power to them. And you don't have to take my word for it. Talk to National Grid, talk to New York State Electric and Gas, talk to LIPA, talk to Con Ed. They're all telling you this at the public hearings, and nobody wants to hear it. And we're just going down this road. I'll listen to comments you have about it, but that's my piece.
Thanks, Bill. Okay. Are there any comments? Okay. Is anybody else? Claudia.
Okay, just in response to that, I wonder if Chris could talk about the applicability of well, I guess we can talk about it. The energy code applies to new construction, yes, and significant renovations, correct? And then I think it doesn't even.
No, just alterations and additions, for example. Is the terminology that the energy law uses.
Okay.
As a council member, what I struggle with is the fact that I'm supposed to vote on code changes to not just determine whether they're good for New York, but also to bring them into compliance with New York state law. And the legislature's already ruled on that. They've made this law. The deadline is looming. It's already been put in place. And I think the technical issues that I've been talking about have fallen on deaf ears. So what do I do in good conscience? Do I vote for something to make it compliant with a law that I know is going to create all kinds of headaches down the road? Or do I vote my conscience and say, I'm opposed to it. I don't care what the law is. I don't know what to do as a code council member. I'm really struggling with this one. I got to tell you, I really am.
I did ask Chris the other day about what is NYPA doing, where's the analysis? And I think that would be great to know more about that.
Yeah, I mean, happy to touch on that piece of it. And, this is obviously something that's, very important to the Department of Public Service. They've been focusing on this keenly, as has NISO in their processes. The Department of Public Service, DPS, is working with the utilities to expand and improve the grid continually. And part of it, part of their ongoing rate cases is about making those investments in the years to come. So they're planning for this. They're working towards this. And this is those changes are going to be in place to help support new construction that is impacted by future codes.
Another question. Robert. I agree in the sense that specific to the energy code, it's been difficult because it seems as if there's this law looming. Not if, it is. And my curiosity is that when we are actually really into the presented changes, at what point can the code council say we disagree with that and don't want that aspect, but yet still be in compliance with the law? That's the hard part here, that I'm assuming that when it's vetted, whether something gets taken out or kept in, we'll still be compliant with that law, and that's the ultimate thing that I'm concerned with. It's as if we were, telling us that you have to have fire sprinklers in a house, that's a law, and then bringing it before us and asking our opinion. It is pretty difficult. Whatever your feelings are, I'm not saying one way or the other. I am a little perplexed on that we have this, what seems to be a bit of pressure on this, that it seems like it's just conflicting with what we're actually trying to accomplish here as a code council. It's not a question, I'm just confused almost to that point on that specific, that I haven't really found out yet that when we do get presented the energy code, if we actually agree that this doesn't really fit for the code and we disagree on it, where does that put us as far as, compliant with that law? I don't expect an answer, I'm just wondering. It seems as if it's taking it out from under us.
I think I want to be careful with hypotheticals, right?
No, it feels as if we're on a review for the code, and that's this committee's here for this council, and to get the majority to vote on rules that are being placed that we think is the best going forward. But at the same time being told, well, this part of it, you have to vote that way. So when I'm reviewing it, I'm like, I don't know whether or not I should say a comment on this, because I don't know what it would matter.
I think you should always feel free to comment.
Sure.
Right?
And I will, but that was always in the background
No,
on that part of the code, as opposed to maybe the construction side, wind loads and speed and egress and things of that nature. We talk about it, and some things you'll push for, you might not get it, you walk away saying, but that committee did the best job it could, and I can accept that. In this particular case, the concern will be, we might not have that possibility. It seems that way.
The only thing I'll say in response is that we do get these, right? 378 is full of legislative directives to this council. We've never faced that before, where a majority of the council disagree with the legislature. But when the legislature tells us this is the policy of the state, we then cease to be the policymaking body, right, at that point. So, but you still have a vote. You're right. That's the answer.
Now, Chris said, the different grids are working on getting us to where the code says we have to be. Is there any type of time frame that the system might be able to handle what is being proposed.
I personally don't have one. I think it would be a good question for DPS on that. What I will note though is regardless of the fuel sources that are used in new construction, the more efficiency that can be included, the lower those fuel usages are. So that's really where the efficiency and long-term investments and things like the envelope really do pay off.
When it gets cold in the Northeast in New York, and you have now a requirement for an electric furnace in every single structure that's built in the state after January 1st, 2026, the grid's not going to be able to deliver power to heat those homes. And in winter, last winter, 43 people froze to death at a storm in the city of Buffalo last year. This isn't you're uncomfortable. This is catastrophic potentially. If the grid can't deliver that power, and I get the sense that on some level there are advocates who think the objective of saving the planet for our children and grandchildren, which is laudable, I am not opposed to that, make that clear. But the idea that the better way to get about it is, if you can't deliver that power and you can't build houses, we're fine with that. That's okay. Shut the economy down. How'd that work during COVID when we shut everything down? It's not going to work if you say we can't build neighborhoods anymore. Because I don't care what you do. If you sell cars for a living, those cars get parked in the garages that home builders build. If you sell food at a restaurant, the people that eat that food and consume it live in houses. If you're a dentist and you fix people's teeth, they get cavities from going to restaurants, they live in houses. Everybody, every single sector. It's not just people that pound nails and put sheetrock up and put roofs on houses and pour foundations. It's everything. There's no sector of the economy exempt from the construction of these neighborhoods, which is why the state has already set a goal going forward of doubling housing production over the next 10 years. And this objective on this time frame is contrary to that objective. I have no issue if you fix the grid first and deliver it. That's the direction to go. But you don't say you've got to connect to electricity if there's not enough power to connect to. And right now, even on transformer loads, National Grid won't put in transformers like they used to in a new subdivision. They say, you start building a house and give us a house that is substantially under construction. That's a vague concept, by the way. But once it's substantially under construction, they'll deliver a transformer to that lot. They don't just put them in and you drive through a neighborhood, see a bunch of pedestals and transformer pads and get a building permit anywhere you want to pick a house. You got to have a house going up first, and then they'll give you a transformer, which means the house is already being framed and I'm building it on generators and all the rest of it, and ignores the fact of what happens once the neighborhood's up and everybody's electric and it gets cold and you've got electric furnaces. How do you handle that? That's why they don't even know how many transformers to put in, because they're unsure of what the loads will be and how many they even need to just put in the neighborhood. This is stuff that people are ignoring the details. And as we all know, the devil is always in the details. And this is a really big deal.
Bill, your points are made. I think we probably need to bring in some folks from PSC, give a presentation as we move forward.
That would be great. I would really appreciate that. I think that's a terrific idea.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. We'll close that agenda item. We'll move to agenda item number 5, which is the public comment period. I believe we still have about 40 on the list. We're going to do what we always do. We're going to follow our procedure. We have 3 minutes per comment. There's a clock. My friend Chad is going to turn that clock around so that the camera can pick it up, and then he's going to turn it back so I can reset it. So every time. So I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. It is now, let's see, 11:25. Let's say we probably go until 12:15 or so. Then we'll take a break so people can eat. Then we'll come back and we'll finish public comment. I don't know if we can take it all in one go, because we'd probably be looking at 2+ hours, and I don't want people getting lightheaded as we move through this. So, Kevin, off you go.
All right, so I guess we'll start with in person in the room in Albany. I think I only have one person on the list at the moment, Josh Cohen. If you want to step right up.
Great, thank you. I'll be brief, especially if you have 42 people that you're expecting from. I just want to introduce myself, the company I work for, and encourage support for adoption of the code. I work for a company called Switch. We are an electric vehicle charging company. We've been around a little over 7 years. And our core commercial focus is on multi-tenant properties, especially residential apartment and condominium buildings. And as you all well know, and as has been mentioned during this meeting, it is so much more cheaper and cost effective to build out the capacity for electrification at the time of construction. So EV charging is not directly in line with this all-electric building code piece, which, as you know, focuses on heat pumps and other technologies, but it's what I would call technology adjacent. And the same principle holds true that as buildings are being constructed and as the electrical systems are being designed and engineered, it's really important to design and plan for the capacity up front that really helps drive down the costs. And just my closing point to make is that the EV charging industry really looks to New York as one of the leading states nationally for good reasons when it comes to electrification and decarbonization. But in our experience, these high-level mandates and goals that matter are not in and of themselves enough to be successful. We need a lot of supporting measures from charging infrastructure to utility programs and building codes for states to have any realistic hope of achieving these mandates. So I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the Albany room? If you could just step up and state your name, please.
Thank you.
And also, if everyone could speak up, I am getting some comments that it's hard to hear people in the room.
Understood. Good day, Deputy Secretary Thibault and council members. My name is Daniel Morrissey, and I'm the Director of Sustainability at TAP Inc., the Community Design Center of the Capital Region, a nonprofit architecture and placemaking firm based in downtown Troy. In our 54 years of practice, we estimate that we have been involved in upwards of 1,000 architecture projects, including historic renovations and new construction locally. We've also been involved in numerous campaigns to preserve and strengthen the social and physical fabric of communities in our region with an emphasis on urban infill. We recognize the age and inefficiency of the electric grid, as Councilmember Toyne is articulating. The problem is gargantuan and yet solvable. I challenge all the developers in the state to work with NYSERDA to pioneer high-performance buildings that require far less energy, able to run on a small number of cold climate heat pumps, which are up to 400% more efficient than existing gas boilers and furnaces. Electrification done right will lead to lower rates of house fires in our communities, among many other benefits. Regarding cost effectiveness criteria, it is necessary to calculate the amortization of projects over a 30-year time horizon, as is stated in the law, in order to most effectively stimulate the market towards change. Getting ahead of the game will be the best for our state in the long run, and we will be able to then demonstrate best practices for the rest of the country, especially regarding secondary and societal impacts such as health. Ultimately, shifting from the current fossil fuel paradigm to a fully electric one will increase resilience, comfort, health, and affordability. The alternative is to remain stuck in the 20th century and get left behind by other states that foresee climate realities with clear eyes. You have the power to propel New York forward to be the true leader that it is, nationally, and adopt a next generation energy conservation code that meets the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room in Albany? See anybody? So we'll switch to the Buffalo office next in person. We have Ellen Banks. So I'm going to unmute the Buffalo office.
Hello. Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Great. I'm Ellen Cardone Banks. I represent the Atlantic chapter of the Sierra Club, which is the statewide organization of the Sierra Club. The building sector is the largest source of greenhouse gas pollution in New York State. Burning fossil fuel in homes and other buildings adds to the climate crisis and is a major cause of respiratory illness, especially in our youngest and oldest people. Heat pumps, both ground-sourced and cold climate air source, reduce energy use and pollution and improve comfort, efficiency, and savings on utility bills. Thermal energy networks will make these innovations work for homes in densely populated areas and large facilities such as campuses, hospitals, and retail centers. Heat pump water heaters and induction stoves will make the burning of gas in homes obsolete and will save customers money while improving health. The Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, Advanced Building Codes and Equipment Standards Act, and the All-Electric Building Act that all require phasing out of fossil fuel in new buildings are not merely aspirational, they are the laws of the state. Fossil fuel companies will try to evade these requirements by citing technological burdens, but they should not be allowed to prevail. Fire-free replacements are proven technologies widely adapted in countries with cold winters. As people see the benefits of electrification in new buildings, consumer demand for non-burning heating and cooking in existing buildings is sure to increase, overcoming the falsehoods and negativity spread by the gas industry. The taxpayers and ratepayers of New York State do not owe the investors and executives of the fracked gas industry guarantees of ever-increasing income. Our building codes should require highly insulated thermal performance, air tightness, and electric readiness for home heating capacity. Here in Buffalo, we see evidence of inadequate insulation even in new buildings when snow melts off roofs quickly after snow falls. Good insulation is life-saving, as shown by last year's blizzard. No one dies during a power outage in a well-insulated house. Please enact codes that are good for our planet, our health, and our finances. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do we have anyone else in the Buffalo office? Okay. We will switch to the New York City office. I believe we have at least one speaker there, Cliff Bonstein.
Yes. Could you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Cliff Bonstein. I am a member of the Religious Action Center of New York. We are a social justice arm of the Reformed Judaism in New York State, with over 90 synagogues and 150,000 congregants across the state. For over the past 2+ years, our congregants worked hard to advocate for the passage of the All-Electric Building Act. In countless meetings with fellow congregants to hear their climate concerns and how those may be addressed by the act, in doing the endless and tireless hard work over a number of years in synagogues across the state, repeatedly calling, emailing, and meeting with legislators. And finally, in celebrating the passage of the act, the culmination of our years of hard work. Now the ball is in your court for you to do what the act tells you to do. We are not your typical advocacy group. We do not represent building developers, and we're not a bunch of environmental advocates. We fought hard for the passage of the All-Electric Buildings Act because our tradition teaches us that we have a responsibility to look after the earth and to preserve our planet, l'dor v'dor, from generation to generation. You may be surprised by how many people across the state are watching what you do. I've testified twice before at the building council meeting. And each time I go back to congregant Zoom calls, and I get a lot of questions from these fellow congregants about what's up with the council. What are they doing? What's taking so long? Will they do the right thing? I remember after the September hearing getting grilled by an older congregant for over 15 minutes about what's up with the NYSERDA cost-benefit analysis. These people care about what you do. Our ask is simple. The 2024 update must incorporate 3 bills: the 2019 Climate Act, the Advanced Building Codes Act, of course, the All-Electric Building Act. and in a way that embodies their precise meaning and intent. That's what the law compels you to do. The three bills do not use the discretionary words may or should when describing your job. They use the compulsory word shall, and that means something. In sum, we ask that the council scrupulously implement the wording and intent of the climate legislation as you're required to do. We will be watching you closely and fully support you in that endeavor. Thank you.
We have one more speaker here. We have one more speaker here. Say your name.
Yes. Thank you. My name is William Serator. I am the Director of Sustainability with the City of Yonkers, currently the third largest city in the state of New York. I'm here working for the Mayor Michael Spano, and we are urging and in support of the passage of this bill. Before I get into a few specifics, I just want to sort of say a lot of the contrary to this bill, or reasons why it shouldn't be done, are the same historical arguments that have been made time and time again for many, many years. These same arguments about costs and various things about people dying were said about kerosene. They were said about the advent of the telephone and the advent of the belt system. And quite frankly, here in New York, our subway system right now is partially in the state that it is in because too many of these kick the can down the road analyses have occurred for years and years and years. Let's not do this again. New York led the way in innovation. We were a city that has always led. We are now woefully behind. We let places like Tibet have a better infrastructure on high-speed rail than we do. Let's not make the same mistake on energy. On energy, people dying in the winter, as was mentioned before, happened because the cost of oil is increasingly more expensive than the cost of electricity. And people die because they made a choice of no heat or food or pay the mortgage. So let's not conflate the two. In terms of energy, I can only say that we have done a number of initiatives, not only in Yonkers, but also I will use myself as an example as a citizen. I installed a electric vehicle charging unit in my house 6 years ago. The cost was about $500 for the unit and about another $800 for an electrician. My cost in those 5 years of time has averaged less than $10 a month, $8.73 a month to be completely accurate. And that is for a full charge of my vehicle every week, as opposed to $4 a gallon times your 10 or 15 gallons per car. So the cost savings are real and they are there. It's also more efficient, and the amount of CO2 emissions emitted is significantly less than anything that goes on the road. The recent pandemic vetted that out and proved it with the amount of vehicles that were not on the road. And unfortunately, it takes action to create these things. And sometimes the action is what makes people nervous. We just had an orange day.
Mr. Serator, I have to ask you to stop, sir. Your 3 minutes is up.
I'm wrapping up. Yep, okay, thank you. But please advocate for this. The action is real. It's no longer hypothetical, and the cost savings are there.
Thank you, sir.
That's here.
All right, I believe that wraps up the in-person public comments that we have. We have a long list of people signed up remotely. If everyone can kind of bear with us a little bit here because we have to find the names, mute and unmute people. So I believe, Chad, you want me to read the names and you'll...
So first up is Assembly Member Emily Gallagher. And she should be unmuted. You're on? So she left the call. We'll come back to her.
I see her name on my screen. You want me to try to unmute her?
There we go.
She said
Thank
she-
you so much.
There we
I'm
go.
so sorry. All right. Hi, I'm Assemblywoman Emily Gallagher. I'm the prime sponsor of the All Electric Building Act, which was enacted into law in the state budget this year. I introduced this important legislation so that New York can achieve our greenhouse gas reduction targets. The building sector is the largest source of greenhouse gas pollution in New York State, and we need to update the building code and energy code in order to reach our goals. The legislative battle to enact the All Electric Building Act was a hard-fought victory, but in the end, both legislative houses and the governor all agreed that changes were needed to the Building Code Council, and the Building Code Council was the entity to deliver those changes. The All Electric Building Act specifically directed the Building Code Council to recognize that the decarbonization of new and existing buildings is closely related to the state's climate agenda, and that the building code be updated to reach that goal. Now, the torch is being passed to you, members of the council, and it is in your capable hands to ensure that our building codes lead us to our climate objectives, and that we do so in an equitable manner so that the decarbonization of disadvantaged communities is being prioritized. This division has already issued 2 versions of the energy code without updating the code to reflect the requirements of New York's electrification laws. The division has said that the 3rd version of the energy code will be issued at the March 2024 meeting, and that version will comply with such laws. Members of the Building Code Council, I ask you to be diligent and assertive, and to make sure that each of the laws and all of the guidelines have been included in the 3.0 version of the Energy Code. Please only support issuing a notice of rulemaking energy code that complies with the All Electric Building Act, the recommendations of the Climate Action Council, and the Disadvantaged Communities Report. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblywoman.
On behalf of State Senator Liz Krueger, Justin Flagg will speak.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Justin Flagg. I'm the Director of Environmental Policy for Senator Liz Krueger. Senator Krueger represents the 28th District in the Senate, which includes the Upper East Side and Midtown neighborhoods of Manhattan. She's also the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. She sends her regards. She couldn't be here today, but she's asked me to speak on her behalf. Senator Krueger continues to monitor the progress being made to incorporate the CLCPA, the Advanced Building Codes and Standards Act, the All Electric Buildings Act, as well as the Climate Action Council Scoping Plan recommendations and the Disadvantaged Communities Barriers and Opportunities Report recommendations. She would like to strongly stress the critical importance of the task being undertaken by the council and staff. The climate crisis is very real, and it is already having a huge impact on New Yorkers all across the state. As we have heard many times today, the largest source of greenhouse gas pollution in the state is the building sector. So it is by making our homes and buildings both highly energy efficient and reliant on clean energy sources that we will have the greatest impact on achieving the mandates of our climate law. This was identified and recommended in the Climate Action Council Scoping Plan. Through the 2024 Building Code update, the Council should be determining how to make new construction highly efficient, resilient, and electrified, and how to address the disproportionate burden of greenhouse gas pollution on disadvantaged communities. The legislature has also directed the Building Code Council to update the code for existing buildings so that we can achieve our greenhouse gas reduction mandates. Senator Krueger is encouraged by staff comments that commit to incorporating these vital laws into the 2024 Building Code and looks forward to reviewing the actual proposed code language. She urges council members to hold staff accountable, to request that staff provide the public with a detailed explanation of the changes to the code so we can understand how each of the new laws is being incorporated. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much.
Up next, we have Michael Hernandez.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Michael Hernandez, New York Policy Director for Rewiring America.
Building Code Council members, we need your voices right now. You have been entrusted to make sure that the 2024 Building Code is complying with the laws and guidelines enacted by the legislature. We are here using our voices to encourage and embolden you to use your voices. The void you leave is being filled by the builders' representative, Bill Tull and Robert, who puts profits over climate, who advocates in these meetings to mitigate or stop compliance with electrification laws. The same groups suing this council to stop compliance with the law. Council members Claudia Bramer and Keith Wren have repeatedly asked at these meetings about the requirements of the climate law, the Advanced Building Codes and Standards Act, and the Climate Action Council scoping plan recommendations for the building sector. We have other strong leaders on this board. Mike Spano, Mayor of Yonkers, Joseph DeStefano, Mayor of Middletown, Sean Hamlin, the Capital District's architect, Tim DeRuger, Rochester's engineer, DHCR's Michael Weber, and Matt Tebow. You are our heroes, our leaders of government, big and small. We need you. We are not asking you to figure out how to fix climate change. The work has already been done for you. All you need to do is make sure the code is aligned with the guidance and law. The Disadvantaged Communities Barriers and Opportunities Report, the building sector, Chapter 12 of the scoping plan have been statutorily created for you to use as guidance. Don't let the 2024 building code through the SAPA process. Don't put it into the SAPA process if it fails to comply with vital guidance documents. And right now it doesn't. A great example of board members asking the right questions of department staff was provided at the NYSERDA board meeting that happened 2 days ago, where NYSERDA board members Jay Coe and Arturo Garcia Costas pushed back on staff's proposed cost-effectiveness methodology and questioned whether it was truly appreciating the climate crisis. That's the type of leadership we need. We believe that you will provide that leadership. Thank you, council members.
Thank you. Yep.
Up next, we have Carol Leah Battaglia.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Carol Lee Battaglia, Building Performance Contractors Association of New York State. We cannot overstate to the BCC that the need is critical at this tipping point in time for 2024 code updates to reflect New York climate law, Advanced Building Codes and Standards, and All Electric Building Act requirements. It is critical that the council complies with New York's electrification laws now. It is critical that you include the CAC recommendations for new buildings in full. Let me be clear, some of this is not part of the business models of our contractors, but experienced energy certified contractors recognize their importance and the need to include them now to avoid negative impacts on home and building owners later. At this tipping point, business models need to pivot. Also, DPS and the utilities work extensively to address infrastructure and accountability for both immediate and long-term future. People are not ignoring the details. We care about the negative impacts of building code changes on taxpayer pocketbooks. It's both a moral and imperative to serve consumer needs. Not including this for 2024 will result in increased retrofit costs through 2050. This is fully preventable by your inclusion of current laws and codes now. Who is responsible for those increased costs to taxpayers if you fail in your duty to implement the law in a timely manner? The number one factor delaying energy transition progress is lack of a strong regulatory environment. This is what New York needs now. This is your job. Change is hard, and it's always opposed in any industry. People didn't want to give up horse and buggies for autos. People did not want to wear masks during a pandemic. People resist change, even if it is the law. But if you, this council right now, if you do not set the regulatory standards at this critical tipping point, If you do not support New York laws, then who will? It's your responsibility, economically, legally, and ethically, to implement existing laws now and protect New York taxpayers. The accountability either starts or stops here with you. Please, please do not fail to include the electrification laws and climate mandates in 2024 building code. Please protect New York homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I do not see a Michael Waite, so we'll move on to Paul Fisk and come back to Michael Waite. Hold on 1 second. Paul, you should be unmuted.
My name is Paul Fisk. I'm a volunteer with the Climate Reality Project, a retired public servant from New York State, and a concerned parent of children who are reluctant to bring their own children into the world that they see ahead of them. Climate scientists have been warning us for decades that we need to take decisive action to preserve the habitability of our planet. Recent warnings have been ever more dire as the globe heats up faster than projected. We'll soon blow past the goals we set in Paris and are entering into extremely dangerous territory. We've run out of time to delay. Cannot afford to kick the can down the road. From here on out, every fraction of a degree of temperature increase matters. It will take good decisions by many people in many positions around the globe to stave off the worst of the looming climate effects. This council is in a position to take crucially needed actions to do its part to slow the world's heating and reduce future trauma. If people in positions such as yours each do their part, we stand a chance to avoid the worst. I chose a career in public service partially in response to President Kennedy's admonition to ask what you can do for your country. I learned that the oath of the Athenian citizens read in part, "We will transmit this city not only not less, but greater, better, and more beautiful than it was transmitted to us." I'm ashamed that my generation is not doing so. So I ask you as public servants to heed those words and to think globally as you decide how to act locally. As you implement the state's laws and scoping plan, think of the future of your children and grandchildren. They will not think kindly of your memory if you don't follow your better angels. Thank you for listening and for your work.
Thank you, sir.
All right, I do not see Deb Peck Kelleher, so we'll move on to Alan Blair. Give me 1 second. Alan, you're unmuted.
Alan actually shows muted on mine still. Paul's in.
Let's try again.
Can you hear me now?
Alan? Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. Hi, I'm from Rochester. I'm here because I wanted to know why the Building Code Council is behind on writing codes directed by both the Climate Act and the All Electric Buildings Act. And first, based on the comments I've heard earlier, I feel the need to state the obvious. The building electrification directives in these laws are requirements, not suggestions. It's my understanding that codes are written to carry out laws and not override them. You can't just ignore a law because you disagree with it. I also understand that some of the delay might come from how NYSERDA does its cost effectiveness determinations. Now, I just heard that when the energy code is updated, a cost effectiveness determination must consider both energy and societal costs over the life cycle of a building. As a physician, I have seen a lot of the societal costs of fossil fuel combustion, which some members of this council seem to be unaware of. Natural gas in residences causes a lot of health problems. Our best research shows that it causes, in cook stoves, about 13% of childhood asthma. Now, the latest DOH data shows that asthma causes New York about $1.3 billion yearly, and that figure is rising rapidly. We've also learned a lot in the past few years about leakage of uncombusted natural gas in homes. Carbon monoxide detectors are nice, but Harvard School of Public Health studies have found over 20 hazardous chemicals and known carcinogens in homes, including benzene and toluene. Their concentrations are often unacceptably high, even when the odorant additive is undetectable. We can't yet put a price on the health damages that entails, but we can't just ignore them in our cost-benefit analyses, no matter how inconvenient it is to obey the law. Last, I want to point out that the Environmental Rights Amendment to the New York State Constitution, which was ratified since the last building codes were written, states unequivocally that each person shall have the right to clean air and water and a healthful environment. Air pollution from fossil fuel use in buildings demonstrably damages the health of New Yorkers, both indoors and out, in clear violation of this amendment. The Building Code Council must do its constitutional duty and update our building codes to reflect this reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Up next is Gregory Thomas.
Hello?
We can hear
We
you.
can hear you, Greg.
Great, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I've been working in building energy efficiency in New York State for 44 years as both a contractor and a consultant. I'm the former chair of Efficiency First, a national energy efficiency contractor trade association that is now a part of the Building Performance Association. I'm the founder and chief strategy and technology officer of Performance Systems Development. PSD supports the federal government, states, utilities, and contractors nationally with the implementation of energy efficiency and heat pump programs. We've been based in New York State for 25 years and have over 100 employees. Contractors will benefit from these new building codes. The heating and plumbing industries benefited when natural gas was introduced to our cities, replacing the heavily polluting coal and wood-burning heating systems of that time. Companies that embraced that opportunity became strong and grew, and cities implemented codes to limit this source of pollution. Now we need to deal with a more subtle and indirect pollutant. The process is creating another generational wealth creation opportunity for New York State's small businesses, including existing heating and plumbing companies. Those companies that move forward with this opportunity will grow. There are a few new skills needed, but fundamentally we need companies to hire people with strong mechanical skills to go into buildings and put in equipment. Companies that do this kind of work now are very well positioned to succeed in this new environment. Energy efficiency plus heat pumps will deliver lower costs, lower loads on the grid, and greater resiliency during crisis. Adoption of the new codes will create more certainty for both contractors and utilities. New York State is already creating programs to help companies make this transition and providing incentives to building owners to help build the market for clean technology. These new building codes will further support contractors in this transition. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So up next we have Claire Henry.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
No, can't hear her. Sorry.
Climate Solutions Accelerator of the Genesee
Claire,
Finger Lakes. Oh,
Claire,
yep.
please, hold on. Please start again. I muted the wrong person.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
All right. Am I good to go?
Yes.
Good to go.
Okay, well, hello again, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to testify today. My name is Claire Henry. I work for the Climate Solutions Accelerator of the Genesee Finger Lakes region, based in Rochester, New York. We serve 9 counties with a diverse population of 1.2 million people. We also serve as the region's clean energy hub, helping individuals and businesses improve the quality of their homes and buildings. We applaud the state legislature for having passed the All-Electric Building Act earlier this year and look forward to having the Building Code Council implement it in the upcoming year. The summer our region experienced this year was not only hotter, wetter, and smokier due to the climate crisis, it was also quite expensive for many of our residents. In July of this year, the city of Canandaigua, which is about 40 minutes away from where I am right now, experienced a 500-year storm that dropped 5.8 inches of rain in 3 hours. The city experienced severe flooding, with many residents losing everything in their basements, including their HVAC equipment. In fact, many residents, more than 70, had to fix or replace their furnaces, which of course is a huge unexpected financial burden. Most of these were fossil fuel powered heating and cooling systems that they replaced their old furnaces with. And these systems could just be damaged again in future floods. On the other hand, we have heat pumps, which we know are an efficient and safe way to heat and cool a building, but they are also actually a flood mitigation measure for buildings. Relocating mechanical equipment above the flood elevation or out of a basement could significantly reduce the risk of critical systems being damaged during a flood. And so proper air source heat pump installation places the appliance at least 6 inches off the ground. And if the families affected by the historic flooding in Canandaigua had heat pumps instead of fossil fuel systems, many of them would not have had to replace their entire HVAC systems before the winter set in. Now, a couple months after our wet, hot, expensive summer, you, the Building Code Council, have an important choice to make. You can continue with business as usual by protecting developers who want to save a few bucks, and gas utility companies who, we should remember, make their money by expanding the gas infrastructure, which includes hooking up new customers at the expense of other ratepayers. Some people may be making money, but we all also have to pay for those new hookups. Or you can play a vital part in protecting New Yorkers from future climate-related disasters like the one in Canandaigua and update our state's code to reflect New York's electrification laws. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And up next, we have Stephen Cowell.
Am I unmuted?
We can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. Great. This is Steve Cowell. I'm the Executive Director of Northeast Energy Efficiency and Electrification Council. We are a nonprofit. We started many years ago. But before that, I was the head of a nonprofit that established and ran energy efficiency for residential on behalf of NYSERDA in New York. So, needless to say, I care deeply about New York and what's going on, and had a chance to work with great people like Greg Thomas, Kara, Mike, Paul. Okay, so let me just jump on a lot of general support, critical support for energy efficiency and endorsement of the electrification legislation is important, and I support that. I'll just add that our name, which is electrification and energy efficiency, putting those two together, and New York has a great policy with NYSERDA and the utilities working together, combining efficiency and electrification will prevent issues with the grid, issues and concerns, and there are issues and concerns at the grid level. I won't deny it, I won't run away, but given the timing, given the priority, and given the analysis that we have seen, we can solve this problem so that electrification can and will happen and be able to be done as these improvements to the grid happen. So we obviously strongly support incorporating electrification into the codes, but also recognize that there are strong efforts and policies in New York to address the issues around grid enhancement and energy efficiency and demand response. These packages together will solve the concerns that have been raised about, can we do this? The answer is yes, we can. Yes, we need to. And the Northeast, multiple Northeast states are working together, working effectively. Massachusetts, Vermont, Connecticut. But we should work together, and this is consistent with legislation, consistent with the need that we have to address climate change, but also long-term costs. This is how we have to address it. We need to exit fossil fuels, and we need to start the process of doing that at the last minute. So I want to encourage and support the council adopting and including the electrification issues passed in the legislature into the codes as we move forward, and just really reinforce that combined strategy, not just codes, but a combined strategy with efficiency,
All I have to ask you
et
is,
cetera. Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity to present, and good luck with your efforts.
thank you.
Up next, we have Jody Smits Anderson.
Am I audible? Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. I'm Jody Smits Anderson. I'm an architect, a lead AP, a well EP, and a regenerative practitioner, as well as a fellow of the American Institute of Architects for my service to the public sector and the profession. I've directly worked on scoping plans for the New York State climate law. I'm an industry expert speaking nationally and engaged with several leading edge building industry organizations, such as the U.S. Green Building Council. I have taught the commercial New York State Energy Code to over 900 owners, architects, engineers, and building officials over the last 2 code cycles. I have 3 points today. One is about clarity. New York State is failing in taking the bold action promised by the climate law, CLICPA. Many architects, engineers, and owners are sitting on their hands, not making any significant changes because they are waiting for someone to clearly tell them what to do. It's also not all or nothing. We need to transition every system and begin now. By not including direct implementation and enforcement into the building code suite, including the energy code, for electrification of new buildings and gut rehabs, this body is directly undermining the climate law. Industry-wide change never happens without the needed clear signals. 2, justice. I applaud the cost-benefit approach, but am dismayed and terrifically concerned that it does not include the human health costs of particulate emissions from fossil fuel use in buildings. By restricting the societal cost consideration to greenhouse gas emissions, NYSERDA and the Code Council are acknowledging our climate peril, which is admirable and needed, but by ignoring the immediate and direct impact of particulate emissions on the people in the very buildings that are created to house and support them, you are also employing a faulty methodology for cost-benefit analysis and continuing the severe burdens tied to systemic issues of redlining and racism. You are inadvertently dismissing the needs of the few as unimportant while focusing on a global issue of climate. And we need to do both. Not only is healthcare a broad systemic societal cost burden, it is also intimate and local. Particulate emissions are active where they are released, and we must have this in our metrics. Electrification, therefore, is not solely a climate strategy, it is a human health and justice action strategy. 3, pushback. The pushback will come from privileged and vocal lobbies and business organizations, possibly including large developers or even the National Association of Home Builders, and more. They have the money, the influence, the concern about their business, and the presence to say that this will be hard and is unfair to business. You likely will not hear from the legions of underserved human beings who have suffered for decades under environmental and social injustices. Hear them anyway. We know that gas stoves in homes emit dangerous toxins and damage health. We know that burning fossil fuel for energy generation is killing millions of people a year in particulate emissions alone. We know that fossil fuel burning is a direct cause of greenhouse gas emissions. We also know that electrified new buildings address all of these issues. They will reduce CO2 emissions at the global level and particulate emissions at the local level and are integral to healthier, safer, cleaner, and more affordable buildings. Summary. New York State set the destination and the path.
I'm gonna have to ask you to
We
stop.
need to meet it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was it.
Next up is Nicole Abin.
For the opportunity to testify today. My name is Nicole Abin, and I'm here on behalf of the Building Decarbonization Coalition, or BDC. BDC unites critical stakeholders on a path to transform the nation's buildings through clean energy. In the last few years, New York State has made a series of commitments that should shape the building code. The CLCPA, the Advanced Codes and Standards Act of 2022, the All Electric Buildings Act of 2023. Additionally, the Climate Action Council advanced the scoping plan in 2022, which included several recommendations to advance policy through the building code. The climate law set ambitious greenhouse gas emission reductions that the state must achieve. Building emissions are a huge part of the state emissions overall, totaling about 32%. There is no path to meet the mandate of the CLCPA without significantly reducing building emissions. The Advanced Codes and Standards Act mandated that provided cost effectiveness, the Code Council must use best efforts to ensure the building code achieves greater energy savings than ASHRAE 90.1. The law also updated the energy policy of the state, incorporating the greenhouse gas emissions reductions mandated by the CLCPA. The All Electric Buildings Act included a first of its kind statewide mandate to achieve zero emissions in new buildings beginning in 2026, as well as electrification ready requirements. The law requires that these updates be included in the building code. The Climate Action Council scoping plan included recommendations for the building code, some of which were legislated through the bills I've talked about. The scoping plan also included improved energy efficiency, improved weatherization, energy storage, and on-site renewable generation. The building code must be updated to reflect the critical victories in the CLCPA, Advanced Codes and Standards, AEBA, and the scoping plan. When such a comprehensive code is in effect, New Yorkers will begin to reap the economic, health, safety, and workforce benefits of building decarbonization. We look forward to working with the code to ensure that the Code Council to ensure that the code delivers on all of the promises that have been made by the governor and the legislature to achieve decarbonized buildings. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have Lisa Marshall.
You calling me? Sorry, didn't hear you.
Yes.
We can hear
Yep,
you.
Lisa.
Great, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Lisa Marshall. I'm the Director of Organizing and Advocacy for New Yorkers for Clean Power, and the biggest part of that job is coordinating a campaign called Renewable Heat Now. Renewable Heat Now has been the leading campaign advocating for home energy efficiency and heat pump adoption for the past 7 years in New York. Before I came to work for New Yorkers for Clean Power, I was the director of a program called Heat Smart Tompkins, where we helped to help homeowners, local businesses, and municipalities adopt home energy, building energy efficiency, and especially heat pumps. And I worked closely, especially in the gas-constrained town of Lansing, New York, where there is no possibility of new gas hookups. I have a lot of experience with both existing buildings and new buildings and heat pumps. And I want to start by taking exception to the gentleman who said that people care about climate change and not about the people and their energy systems. Nothing could be, and their safety, nothing could be further from the truth. I've had to field call after call from low-income and elderly folks struggling with very dangerous, unsafe, and inadequate heating of all different kinds, and help them to improve their home's comfort, safety, and affordability for many years. And I'm very dedicated to the comfort, safety, and health of homeowners, as well as climate solutions. And so is everybody I'm involved with, the thousands of people in this movement. Just yesterday, I was in Albany with youth climate leaders from all across the state, children ages 10 to 22, calling on our government to implement fully the CLCPA and pass the New York Heat Act to help us convert off of gas so that they can have a livable future. And I challenge anyone here to watch the live stream of their comments and not be filled with tears over their desperation for the leaders of this state and all of you to act swiftly and in accordance with our climate law. New technologies, well, heat pumps aren't really new, but change in energy is always resisted, and in all kinds of industry. I'm old enough to remember when we fought for decades over putting airbags and anti-lock brakes and other safety measures in automobiles, as well as catalytic converters. The auto industry is doing fine, and we have much safer cars to drive in now than we ever did. New homes that are energy efficient and built with heat pumps are the most resilient in the case of a power outage or storm because of the excellent weatherization. You know, you can easily stay warm for hours and days in a well-insulated home when the energy goes out. Our electric grid is not perfect. Our energy system is not perfect. We have to walk and chew gum at the same time.
I'm going to have to ask you to
I'm
wrap up.
building a more resilient and effective electric grid as we slowly over time replace existing systems with heat pumps. But new buildings are very cost effective, safe, and there's absolutely no reason not for any new building to be built in New York today
Just stop now.
with a fossil fuel system. Thank you very much.
All right, I do not see Thomas O'Keefe or Alicia Bacon, so we're moving on to Savannah Bertrand.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Hello, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Savannah Bertrand, and I am the Policy Outreach Manager at SEALD. SEALD is a climate tech company on a mission to stop home energy waste and electrify all homes, and we were founded and are based in New York. In our experience at SEALD, we have found that households often pursue energy efficiency upgrades to improve the comfort of their homes. Home energy efficiency upgrades also help people live in healthier homes that use less energy, a win-win for people, the grid, and the climate. And strong building codes are so critical for increasing home energy efficiency. We are very supportive of the exciting opportunity to update building codes in New York. In particular, updated codes will help New Yorkers improve the energy efficiency of their homes while also allowing us to meet our state greenhouse gas reduction goals. We encourage NYSERDA to amend their cost effectiveness methodology to include factors in their savings categories such as reduced energy consumptions, savings associated with lower energy costs, savings from secondary sources, and savings from societal effects. We are also excited that the Advanced Building Codes Act directed the BCC to update the building codes to achieve the recommendations of the Climate Action Council, which included phasing out combustion equipment from existing homes and making such homes energy efficient. We are excited about the benefits that these actions will bring to New Yorkers. After all, buildings in New York make up 32% of greenhouse gas emissions, and we must take immediate action to curb those emissions while also improving the comfort and health of people's homes. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. That's all.
Thank you.
And I do not see George Kounourakis, so I'm moving on to Sarah Baer. Hold on 1 minute. Sarah, you should be unmuted.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Sarah Bayer. I'm a board member of New York Passive House. We are a nonprofit organization with a vision to help create a carbon neutral, healthy, resilient, durable built environment for New York, centered around the adoption of all electric passive house construction. Members consist of built environment experts across the entire industry. We strongly encourage the Building Code Council to incorporate the emissions limits on site for buildings and electrify new construction. And we encourage NYSERDA to adopt a logical view of the cost-benefit analysis of electrification and include all the externalities that have been ignored in previous calculations to the detriment of our health and viability of our economy into the future. No longer can we design our society in silos without considering the effects on other related systems. Our large membership has already designed and built all-electric passive house buildings for many years. For a fraction of increased construction costs, which in fact is not always the case, the health and financial benefits of this construction will pay for itself in a swift time frame well within the parameters of the law. In fact, even attempting to quantify the health benefits will surely leave something out. These buildings provide healthy, resilient, and cost-effective projects which New York State and frankly all jurisdictions deserve. We cannot sacrifice this in order to preserve the choice of using a toxifying gas stove, for example. All electric buildings without on-site combustion have been cost-effective for years and provide reliable heating, cooling, and hot water. Current heat pump technology is at minimum 3 times more efficient than fossil fuel equipment will ever be. In terms of grid capacity, for example, studies are showing in New York City that we have the capacity for expansion of wintertime load for at least a decade without significant investment, which is what, for electrification, the wintertime is when the electric use will go up, since the grid is sized for summertime peaks and cooling is mostly already electric. As others have commented or will comment, enforcing our all-electric buildings law will provide benefits to our society in the billions of dollars and the costs pale in comparison. We encourage efforts to support the transition of those parts of the economy that are not prepared for this change so we can move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I think we're gonna break for lunch. We've got about 24 left. So why don't we take 15 minutes? Everyone can answer nature's call, and then we'll return at 12:36, 12:37, 12:40, let's say, and we'll resume public comment at that point. So with that, I'll take us off the record, and we stand. We had a laptop die and a tablet die, so at this point we have an audio connection. They can hear us, we can hear them, but at this point we do not have video to New York City. We have a quorum still here in the room. We're also with Buffalo. Oh, there she is. Oh, okay, we have it back. I spoke too soon. Everything I just said, forget it. Let's move on. Okay, we see you guys again in New York City. Great. Kevin, we're back to public comment. If you guys want to start to move forward again, that'd be great.
So first we have Luis Garcia.
Honorable Council members, I'm Luis Garcia, representing the Association for Energy Affordability. I stand before you today addressing a critical matter concerning the implementation of the All-Electric Building Act, landmark legislation already enacted by our state. But the journey does not end with legislation alone. The true spirit and intent of this act can only be realized through its full and unobstructed integration into our state's building code. This current hurdle poses a significant barrier to the act's implementation, undermining the state's commitment to environmental stewardship and public health. It is imperative that these obstacles be addressed and overcome. The Council holds a responsibility not just to the letter of the law, but the vision of a greener, healthier New York that the law embodies. The economic implications of this act are profound. Fully implementing it opens the door to innovation in the building sector, cleaner air, healthier communities, and major utility savings for New Yorkers. Environmental responsibility and economic prosperity can go hand in hand. Pretending otherwise is a willful misinterpretation of reality. Home builders, like all industries, must adapt and innovate. The future of our state depends on your willingness to comply with the law and embrace these changes. Incorporating the All-Electric Building Act into the building code is not just a legal obligation. It is a moral one. It represents a promise to future generations, a promise of cleaner air, and an end to the addiction to combustible fuel, a promise for a sustainable living environment. It is a commitment to equity, ensuring that all New Yorkers, especially those in disadvantaged communities, benefit from the inevitable transition to clean energy. On behalf of the Association for Energy Affordability, we urge the Council to uphold the state's commitment to the All-Electric Building Act. We call for an update to the building code and for decisive action to incorporate this act into the fabric of our state. Let us honor the spirit of the law and lead the way towards a sustainable and prosperous future for all New Yorkers. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
And up next we have Caleb Crawford.
Hi, my name is Caleb Crawford. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm a registered architect, a LEED accredited professional, a certified passive house designer, and the chair of the policy subcommittee of the Committee on the Environment at the AIA New York City chapter, American Institute of Architects. And AIA New York supported the All-Electric Building Act and the general climate acts in general. I urge the council to approve the update to the code to support the legislations that have been enacted so far, and make the code changes that have been required to, and make the code changes required to support the New York City climate goals and legislation. It was a major breakthrough, the All-Electric Buildings Act. Do not sacrifice it. We are in a climate emergency. We've been kicking the can down the road for most of my life. I first voted for president when Jimmy Carter ran against Reagan. So we're out of time. We've run up a tab. It's time to pay the bill, right? If NYSERDA's new evaluation criteria don't show a cost benefit, ask them to change it so it does, right? You have control over this, right? There's been great testimony so far, overwhelmingly in support of the code changes. Others have spoken to the environmental benefits. They have spoken to the efficiencies of heat pump for heating, hot water, clothes dryers, induction cooking, all of that. New technology is coming online daily. The technology change in the last 10 years has been remarkable. The next 10 years will be amazing. The costs are declining, efficiencies and longevity are increasing. Fossil fuels have no place in the future of New York State. Fossil fuels in New York State is a giant vacuum sucking wealth from our economy. We're currently in the 5th industrial revolution, which is sustainability, resilience, and renewable energy. This is a major economic opportunity for the state of New York, as well as our moral obligation to the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Connor Bambrick.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Connor Bambrick. I'm with Environmental Advocates NY. Thank you for the opportunity. The Advanced Standards Act, the All Electric Buildings Act, the CLCPA, and the scoping plan have all laid out a very clear vision for what needs to occur here. And I want to start just really by acknowledging and applauding the staff at Department of State, NYSERDA, members of the Building Code Council for all the hard work that has been put into this thus far in advancing this update in a really expedited manner. It's not an easy task, and I don't want that to be overlooked. I would like to associate myself with all the previous commenters, but really just want to highlight one key aspect of the climate law. Section 7273 of the CLCPA requires all state agency decisions to take into account one, progress towards meeting the state's greenhouse gas emission reduction goals, but then also equally and perhaps even more important, the impacts the decisions here are going to be made on environmental justice or disadvantaged communities. That is a requirement of the law. It applies in this instance, and I urge both NYSERDA and the Codes Council to keep that in mind going forward. In particular, with regard to the health impacts. I know that issue was raised earlier. I just want to reiterate it. In particular, when it comes into the cost effectiveness considerations, we need to look at the avoided health cost impacts when coming up with these numbers. And then finally, just it was referenced earlier, the tragedy in Buffalo last year. I would encourage folks to look at the great work the organization Push Buffalo has done out there. Anecdotally, from what I've heard during that situation last year, the people that were living in the sustainable housing developments that they've put up when the outages occurred, temperatures did not drop inside below 50 degrees. And and that's a testament to what energy efficient zero emission buildings can do. So please, I encourage you to look at that real world impact. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Juan Martinez. We have Juan registered, so we'll assume that's you.
Hello there, thank you. My name is Juan Martinez. I'm a managing director of Pace Nation, a trade association which advocates for property assessed clean energy financing. Our members include lenders, program administrators, local governments, and PACE professionals. We urge the Building Code Council to update the state's energy code in a manner consistent with the carbon reduction goals in the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, the Climate Action Council Scoping Plan, and the All Electric Buildings Act. PACE provides building owners with low-cost, long-term, fixed-rate financing for renewable energy and energy efficiency improvements, and can therefore serve as a key electrification strategy to achieve the Climate Action Plan goals. PACE lenders finance 100% of the hard and soft costs of eligible projects. The financing is secured by a voluntary property tax assessment, and in recent years, the program was expanded to finance new construction as well. PACE is a true example of a public-private partnership. Private property owners secure private financing without any taxpayer or ratepayer funds in cooperation with local governments who get to encourage big investment in economic development in the communities. Over 60 localities participate in the program. The state's two program administrators, the New York City Energy Efficiency Corporation and the Energy Improvement Corporation, have funded over $200 million in commercial PACE projects to date. Nationally, over $5 billion have been funded, and this program is growing rapidly. More than half of that was funded in the last 3 years. With commercial PACE as an option, building owners in New York have the opportunity to finance decarbonization projects over long periods of time, which keeps costs low. And because the financing is paid through property taxes, lenders offer far lower interest rates than what is available on the traditional market. An example, the Hyatt Place Hotel in downtown Albany recently opened, used $6.4 million in CPACE financing for an energy efficient building envelope and lighting over a 21-year term. When considering the cost and benefits of the Energy Code, we urge NYSERDA to examine the range of financing opportunities that building owners have available to them, and not simply rely on cost factors that presume building owners will have to resort to the private market to fund these projects. In short, PACE is the engine that we need for decarbonization, and when we're considering the feasibility of the code and the cost effectiveness standard, we really need to take a look at the program as a solution to one of the many solutions that we can bring to bear to the problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next is Melissa Carlson.
Thank you. My name is Melissa Nelson. I am an architect and also a climate advocate. I work primarily on residential additions. My house is all electric, and I am glad that the building code is continually improving our buildings for safety and efficiency. I rarely get to design a building better than code, as that is more costly. So I look to the code to create the best home possible. I am glad for the Advanced Building Code Act of 2022, pushing homes to be even more resilient. I appreciate the airtightness now required in buildings because they'll be more comfortable year-round and a better refuge in a power outage. Gas-fired appliances might operate in a power outage, but they pollute indoor air, causing health problems. Electric appliances are cheaper to operate than a gas-fired home. The efficiency of electric heat pumps puts less strain on the grid and makes it easier for on-site batteries to power them. Such a site-powered house could be a refuge for several families if needed. All this is good news for a homeowner. From an advocacy view, I'm proud that our state is a leader in the nation and has the climate law to guide our decisions. Multiple sources show that improving our buildings is the next opportunity for our state's climate improvement. I want the same healthy and efficient homes for all families as part of climate justice, not just the ones that I'm for at Architect. So I look to the code to also guide builders and municipal building departments to create the best homes they can. I advocated for the climate law and the All Electric Building Act, and I'm glad they passed, building momentum to now continue with the building electrification. Since the code must comply with these laws, I look forward to more beneficial changes. Benefits will be achieving the state's climate goals, investments at all levels of electricity productions and use, helping many individual homeowners, and the environment we all breathe. Thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you.
Up next, we are changing order a little bit to Kasif Hussain. He is on behalf of the New York City Public Advocate for Mr. Williams. Hold on one second while I find your name. You should be unmuted.
Hello, good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak here. My name is Kashif Hussain, he, him, his pronouns. I am the Deputy Public Advocate for Infrastructure and Environmental Justice, representing the New York City Public Advocate, Jumaane D. Williams. I will be reading a statement on his behalf. Good afternoon. I am Jumaane D. Williams, Public Advocate for City of New York. I thank the committee members for holding this hearing. The Building Code Council is required by law to periodically update the building code to reflect the new standards and policies established since the previous building code update. Since the last update 5 years ago, a number of environmentally friendly laws have been signed into law. As in the past, the Building Code Council has asked the legislature to require the council to include all electric policies in the Energy Code. In advance, I'd like to thank the council for following through with its promise to include these policies, now required by the law by the New York State All-Electric Buildings Act. Building Code Council must adapt to the realities of climate change. Therefore, we must update the New York State's building code to include necessary mandates to encourage environmentally sustainable development. The building sector is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the New York State, making up 32% of the statewide emissions. This is why codifying the All-Electric Buildings Act, which requires the Building Code Council to prohibit equipment and building system that burns fossil fuels in newly constructed buildings, is so important. It is my understanding that NYSERDA has underestimated building electrification savings. I encourage NYSERDA to continue exploring the extensive number of opportunities for saving over cost by electrifying buildings. Electric heat pump water heaters, induction ovens, and electric dryers are vastly more efficient than their oil and gas-fired counterparts. Electrifying these appliances reduces energy use and pollution and also improves comfort, efficiency, and savings. As many factors as possible should be considered in the savings area. Factors such as reducing energy consumption, savings associated with lower energy costs, saving from secondary sources, and saving from societal effects. For example, there is evidence demonstrating the direct relationship between decarbonization and better health outcomes. Simply put, decarbonization leads to healthier citizens. While these are not directly related to the dollars and cents of what the building developer sees, updating the energy code will lead to society-wide savings that should be accounted for. I thank the work of the council and look forward to continuing discussions on incorporating the requirements set by the New York State All-Electric Buildings Act, the recommendations of the Climate Action Council Scoping Plan, and the requirements of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Bria Donahue. Bria, are you there?
Oh, yes, sorry. Didn't call my name. Thank you, members of the New York State Fire Prevention and Building Codes Council, for holding this hearing today. I'm Bria Donahue, Government Affairs Manager at AAA New York. We represent more than 5,500 architects and design professionals committed to positively impacting the physical and social qualities of New York. The passage of the All-Electric Buildings Act earlier this year in the fiscal year 2024 New York State budget was a major step forward towards reaching New York's 2050 net zero carbon goals. However, without appropriate implementation into energy codes, these ambitious goals are unachievable if New York fails to address the energy efficiency and energy sources of buildings. In New York, buildings are the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions at 32%. It is critical we electrify appliances and utilize electric heat pump water heaters, induction ovens, and electric dryers to reduce energy unit pollution, as well as improve savings for homeowners. It is important that the Division of Codes and Standards updates the 2024 Building and Energy Code to reflect New York's electrification laws prior to the proposed building and energy codes being filed in the state register and commencing the SEPA process. Additionally, AIA New York strongly encourages NYSERDA to include additional externalities in their new cost-effectiveness methodology. The original proposal did not include calculations regarding the benefits of averted health impacts or decarbonizing advantaged communities. It is important that the indirect implications of electrifying buildings are a factor in cost calculations. As a staunch supporter of the All Electric Buildings Act, AIA New York strongly encourages the Building Codes Council, NYSERDA, and the Department of State to fully comply with the law to ensure we meet New York's bold decarbonization goals. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we have Aaron Sherman.
I see I'm unmuted. I'm Erin Sherman. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I belong to RMI, a nonprofit organization that works to transform global energy systems. We applaud staff and NYSERDA for their work up until now, which positions New York State to lead the U.S. toward new construction decarbonization across all climate zones. The Council is expected to vote in March on the Notice of Rule and Development, a critical step to implement Executive Law, Section 378, and Energy Law, Section 11-104. We urge the Council to minimize exemptions or loopholes in the proposed code. Exemptions should allow fossil fuel use only for purposes that are truly infeasible to accomplish with electricity and only for those purposes within buildings. Additionally, the code should include demand management, renewable energy, and energy storage provisions that minimize the likelihood that, quote, electric service cannot be reasonably provided, end quote. While the Public Service Commission defines this exemption, the Code Council can and should reduce the likelihood that buildings will require it. Regarding the Energy Code update, the proposed cost-effectiveness rule conservatively estimates the beneficial societal effects of energy efficiency. It does not include the value of energy efficiency as a distributed energy resource, the reduction of health-harming pollutants like NOx and PM2.5, or lives saved by buildings that stay safe during extreme weather. The Council should consider any code that passes the proposed cost-effectiveness rule more than justified by its combined private and societal benefits, and should not reduce its stringency in any way. Finally, the climate executive and energy law sections directing this code update are indispensable to the success of the Climate Action Council scoping plan, which in turn is critical for New York to lead the way toward a prosperous future. The Building Code Council can make major historic strides toward this future in 2024. We implore the Council, the Division, and NYSERDA to act swiftly to ensure an on-time code that fulfills the climate executive and energy laws and the Climate Action Council scoping plan to the maximum extent feasible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up now we have Thomas Wright. Thomas?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. We can.
Good afternoon. My name is Thomas Wright. I am from Beacon, where I'm a member of Beacon Climate Action Now. I'll start with basic facts, which hopefully are not in dispute. Building codes regulate the construction of buildings. Buildings are a third of greenhouse gas pollution in New York State. If one were committed to reducing this pollution, one would naturally turn to the building code, particularly the energy efficiency code, to enforce those reductions readily achieved through electrification, utilizing cold climate air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps. This is exactly what New York State has stipulated in the CLCPA and through the CAC's scoping plan. It is what New York State has required with the Advanced Building Codes and Standards Act of 2022, and it is what New York State has legislated with the All Electric Buildings Act. What remains is for the Building Code Council to incorporate these initiatives into the 2024 draft of the Building Code. Hopefully, this is also not in dispute. I applaud the Council for its careful review, but the facts and circumstances of the climate crisis are overwhelmingly in favor of swift action on implementing these decarbonization requirements into the 2024 code. Mandated electrification of new construction is critically important because it is the newest machines that will be polluting the longest. This is precisely why, in March of this year, responding to community organizing by Beacon Climate Action Now, my hometown of Beacon voted unanimously to revise the local energy efficiency code to prevent the use of fossil fuel combusting equipment in new construction and major renovations. This law has an effective date of just 30 days from now, the first in New York State. We are proud to lead the way in setting standards for building electrification, but statewide goals require statewide standards. for truly transformative mitigation of greenhouse gas pollution, the Building Code Council needs to now help lead the way for New York State. The legislators have spoken. The Climate Action Council has spoken. The governor has spoken. The people are begging you, do the right thing, the necessary thing, and adopt full electrification into the 2030 code. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And now we have Ann Pernick. Ann?
Oh, hello. I think my sound dropped out for a moment. Can you hear me okay?
No, we can.
We can.
Okay, thank you. Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Ann Pernick, and I am with Safe Cities that Stand at Earth, and we work with government leaders and advocates across the U.S. and Canada to phase out fossil fuels. We do this for local health and safety, as well as global climate. There are significant health and safety reasons for keeping gas out of new construction in New York. Almost 20% of childhood asthma cases in New York are attributed to gas stoves. There was a $2.75 million settlement over the gas leak and fire in Brewster. A June headline from Inside Climate News about New York City read, as New York's gas infrastructure ages, some residents are left with leaking pipes or no gas at all. Why would New York want to lock more children, families, and buildings into the system? Fortunately, leaders around the state took action so the state would not. As you know, the Building Code Council has the responsibility to codify the All-Electric Building Act, and I urge you to do so swiftly, as well as codifying other state laws that require the 2024 code update, protect disadvantaged communities from additional greenhouse gas emissions, and include the recommendations of the Climate Action Council for newly constructed buildings. Thank you for doing this critical work, and again for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you.
Now, Elizabeth Strum is up.
Hi, you can hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. I simply represent myself as a New York State resident in Saugerties, New York. And I want to thank the Buildings Code Council in advance for taking on the hard and complex work of meeting the All-Electric Building Act requirements. Over the past 5 years, my husband and I have made changes step by step, moving our house off fossil fuels to green energy from sunlight. It's been extremely satisfying, but a concerted initial lift, especially as we approach retirement. I'm convinced, though, that such moves towards sustainability are imperative for the prosperity, health, and security of the next generations. And my sense of urgency increases knowing this year has been the hottest on record, according to the UN. We must be heroic at this time. I'm proud New York is progressive on climate action and deeply appreciative for the heavy lift the Building Codes Council and NYSERDA have done and will do to carry on this crucial work. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we have Michael Fazio.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Fazio. I'm the Executive Vice President of the New York State Builders Association. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And I fully understand that this law and the mandates begin on January 1st, 2026. But my comments today want to address the thousands of future homes that are currently in a pipeline that are going to be built or have started to be built up to the deadline date. And many of these projects have been several years in the making of the approval process. And what we have now real time are my members, builders and developers around the state are in confusion and indecision as to how to move forward with their projects. And I think this is the second or third time I've spoken about this at the council, in addition to a few letters I've sent to the council regarding this issue. So there's confusion on how to proceed. And I'll give you an example of one of my members downstate. There's a 400 home project. And they're willing to start now, although they don't have to do all electric, and they'd like to put an EV charger in each of the homes and commit to electric now, even although they don't have to. But the capacity does not exist on the grid today to electrify. And my question is, where is the capacity? Based on the comments I heard earlier today, we're working on it and there's no time. Lastly, well, before I finish, I would like to ask respectfully again that my industry, the residential home building industry in New York State, can get guidance on how to proceed moving toward the mandate of January 1, 2026. So I asked that. Also, lastly, the energy code will inevitably add to the cost of new homes. And that's, to be fair, that's not the only cost increases we've seen over the last few years, but it will add to the cost of new homes. And my fear is that it's going to put the dream of home ownership further out of the reach of middle-class folks in New York State who are bearing the brunt of this change as ratepayers, as taxpayers, moving forward. And one last thing I'd like to note, and I've been to the NYSERDA webinars, I've been to different stakeholder meetings over the past year, I'd say. And even today, I understand this is a very important initiative to transfer carbon-free and to clean energy.
Mr.
But
Fazio, I have to
what I
ask
hear
you.
very little about is the cost. The cost to do this is going to be,
Sir.
Started 2 years, well, I'm going to finish up one more line. It
Sir, I
started maybe about $600 billion. At the end of the day, it's going to be over $800 billion for this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anshul Gupta. Anshul,
Can you hear me?
you're very quiet.
You're very quiet, but we hear you.
Okay, I will try to speak louder. Good afternoon. My name is Anshul Gupta, and I'm the Policy and Research Director at New Yorkers for Clean Power. We thank the Building Code Council and the DPS staff for their diligent efforts in preparing the code update and encourage them to adopt a code that fully reflects the requirements of state laws. Gas utilities and their status quo allies have been engaged in egregious campaigns against New York's climate initiatives using misinformation and fear-mongering. So let's get to some facts. Long Island Power Authority and Con Edison, which together cover 60% of New York's electricity customers, support these laws. I will read an excerpt directly from Con Edison's 2023 policy memo. Con Edison says, "We support electrification of all new buildings with limited exceptions. We support repeal of the so-called 100-foot rule, which subsidizes new gas connections, and we support reduction of natural gas consumption consistent with the goals of the CLCPA." They go on to write, quote, "Con Edison's commitment includes support for changes to building codes that reduce the use of fossil fuels in buildings, policy reforms and programs that reduce natural gas consumption and provide customers clean energy alternatives, and grid enhancements that ensure all our customers can meet their clean energy goals," unquote. The NYSO 2023 Power Trends report predicts that our winter peak will not exceed the summer peak until mid-2030s. Responsible builders and developers, and those who have kept up with technology trends, are constructing all electric buildings of all sizes today, everywhere in New York State from Buffalo to Long Island. I live in an all-electric home. There is no such thing as an electric furnace that anyone will be forced to install. Modern cold climate heat pumps use 2 to 4 times more energy than their fossil fuel counterparts and provide both heating and cooling. Let's not forget how important affordable cooling is for residents' safety and comfort in a rapidly heating climate. On that topic, I'd like to remind the Council that we went from almost no air conditioning to widespread adoption of central air conditioning within a span of 2 decades, from the late 1950s to the 1970s. Our electrical grid was able to handle the transition then, and it nearly doubled in capacity during that transition. During last year's Buffalo blizzard that was mentioned earlier, 11 people died in Erie County in their homes with fossil fuel heating that didn't work. during the power outage. The sole death in Niagara County was from fossil-fueled carbon monoxide poisoning. A UBMD clinic in Buffalo suffered more than $100,000 in damages from catastrophic failure of their gas heating system. So we urge the Building Code Council to disregard the fear-mongering and misinformation from a small but highly vocal section of profit-driven special interests and follow the state law. It would be a disgrace if this body succumbs to bullying by voices talking about electric furnaces. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have Douglas Lawrence.
We can hear you.
Hopefully everyone can hear me. My name is Doug Lawrence. I have a little bit different view than mostly everyone in the room, simply because my history is with Green Building since 2009 as an investor. I actually launched the very first green real estate fund and investment bank in the country in 2009 at JP Morgan. Our experience was nobody understood that being green meant cutting energy, water, and waste consumption for technology. We did it successfully. We raised $182 million to do so, and we've launched successive funds. Always show that by being green, you can get high performance buildings, excessive returns, very, very profitable investments, and help impact positively on the climate. So I'm using that to say this. I believe and support the all-electric building codes that are before us today. I want it to be stronger and more assertive than ever. But my ask is simply this: to allow technologies that may seem out of favor, but have been improved over time, allow that to be also explored fully in the code. What do I mean by that? I mean batteries that don't use lithium. That is one. It's very important. Zinc-made, American-made batteries, higher power density than lithium, and then do not explode, should be explored and allowed in the codes to be installed. And the second is hydrogen technology, through the use of solid oxide fuel cells. You're not burning gas. You are chemically oxidizing the most abundant fuel source in the universe that does not produce greenhouse gas emissions. I ask those two things specifically because I want to see this get done. I want to see New York State be the leader in all electric building technologies and buildings themselves. I want our carbon emissions reduced. And the only way we're going to get there is by trying other technologies that heretofore are not being talked about. Thank you very much for allowing me to make comments.
Thank you.
And John Rath.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Thank you very much. My name is John Rath. I'm Director of Operations for the trade organization that's known as New York Geothermal Energy Organizations, sometimes referred to as NYGEO. Our members include geothermal system designers, installers, drillers, general contractors, engineers, manufacturers, distributors, energy consultants, and lots of industry stakeholders who install or advocate for the use of ground source heat pumps when cooling and heating buildings in this state. Our members are out in the economy every single day. We abide by building and energy codes, and we take joy in being part of the rapidly growing New York State clean energy economy. Our members are very optimistic about the pace of growth and the existing, I want to emphasize, existing technology to decarbonize safely, cost effectively, and quickly if there aren't unnecessary barriers. So I hear concerns about grid capacity. In fact, we have a saying now that says, what you get from the borehole, you don't need to get from the grid. As we speak right now, our members are installing our cost-efficient building technology in new housing developments and high-rise buildings. That is going on right now. And in addition, I've learned recently the U.S. Department of Energy has a thing called virtual power plants, which demonstrate another existing and cost-effective and immediately available answer for grid capacity concerns. So we at New York Geo appreciate the work of the Secretary of State, DPS, and NYSERDA professionals. We're anxious to work with the new codes to further decarbonize New York State. And we know that that adopting those codes will continue to enhance our economy and our environment. So here's what we are asking. Here's what we want. That the Building Code Council gives us the codes version that complies with existing laws and don't negotiate or make anything optional. We want to include electrification as required by passage in the state budget by 2026 of the All Electric Buildings Act. And we want you to follow the recommendations by the most educated and credible group created in New York, the Climate Action Council. 3 things we're asking for. On behalf of our New York Geo Board of Directors and our members, we appreciate the opportunity to comment. We stress our overwhelming support for adoption of the legislatively mandated codes. Any member of this council has an open invitation to visit any of our many highly functional locations. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Denise Patel.
You're unmuted.
Oh, hello. Can you
Denise?
hear me?
We can hear you.
My name is Denise Patel, and I'm the Climate Campaigns Advisor for New York Communities for Change. We've been talking a lot about the code and just wanted to bring to the forefront a little bit of perspective that in the past 2 weeks, global temperatures breached the 2-degree threshold. COP28 is underway. It's being led by fossil fuel interests in a country that was built on oil. And it's clear that every action to reduce emissions is not only urgent, but extremely necessary. That is why it's good news that New York State has taken action to end and reduce emissions from our highest polluting sector, which is buildings. And in the last legislative session, NYCC was at the forefront of the fight to pass the All Electric Building Act. We fought for this law because our members at NYCC represent some of the most disadvantaged communities in the state. They must often choose between paying rent, electricity bills, and healthcare. We suffer from highest rates of asthma and cardiovascular disease in the state and are at the highest risk of losing their homes, whether it's in a climate disaster or in an economic crisis. They're also looking for good paying jobs that would be created if buildings are required to weatherize and electrify. We know that decarbonizing buildings will provide important societal benefits by creating jobs, lowering bills over time, and cutting pollution. In addition to All Electric Building Act, the CLCPA requires the Building Code Council to update the 2024 building code if it interferes with lowering the statewide emissions goals. Any delay in action from the council now will jeopardize its ability to meet this important requirement. And the CLCPA also requires the council to address the needs and suffering of EJ communities. Many EJ communities live in older, less energy efficient homes and suffer from poor air quality. Updated codes can help address a multitude of issues from pollution to energy affordability for EJ communities. The Building Code Council, in developing the 2024 Building Codes Update, has an outsized opportunity to improve the lives and futures of New Yorkers, especially our most vulnerable, by establishing a progressive building code policy that will shift us away from the causes of climate change from our most polluting sector towards solutions, more efficient and all electric buildings. We urge you to take timely and immediate action to update the 2024 code in compliance with these laws. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Paul Keisler. Sorry. Hold on, Paul. No, it's not. Paul, we're going to have to come back to you. We're having a technical difficulty. So we're going to move to Ann Earling. Hopefully this works.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, man.
Hi, I'm Ann Erling, a volunteer with New Yorkers for Cool Refrigerant Management. We ask that the Code Council update the mechanical and building codes to allow the use of A3 refrigerants in residential heat pumps. There is strong precedent for making this change. The flammability of A3 refrigerants is not a concern in monoblock heat pump systems that circulate no refrigerant inside homes. Recognizing their safety, the International Electrotechnical Council, of which U.S. is a member, last year unanimously approved the use of A3 refrigerants, like refrigerant-grade propane, in amounts needed for residential heat pumps. These heat pumps are already being safely installed in Asia, Europe, and over our border in Canada. It's important for New York to allow them now in this code update cycle for 3 reasons. One, the scoping plan calls for the state to, as soon as possible, update relevant codes, including the mechanical code, to allow the use of low GWP alternatives for HFCs. We note that the ICC is recommending inclusion of A2L refrigerants, which is fine, but A2Ls still have much higher global warming potentials than natural refrigerants like the A3 propane, and are less energy efficient too. For these reasons, it's important to include A3 refrigerants now, rather than wait until the next code update cycle to do so. Number 2, heat pumps regularly leak their refrigerant. The California Air Resources Board estimates typical leakage rates of 147% over a heat pump's lifetime, nearly 70% during usage, and another 80% at end of life. This is a real problem when what's leaking is R410A, New York's currently most common heat pump refrigerant, with a 20-year GWP of 4,400. We can get that GWP down below 1 by switching to R290, refrigerant-grade propane. Number 3, New York State is installing a lot of heat pumps these days, which is a great thing. But until we have access to units with better refrigerants, with every installation, we're also locking in high global warming potential refrigerant emissions. I've been viewing deliberations from COP28 underway now in Dubai. Emissions in New York contribute to existential threats to countries elsewhere in the world. The level of ambitious action you embrace in this code update process will literally affect life and death in deeply affected areas. We ask you to embrace the highest possible climate ambition in this code update and allow access to A3 refrigerants for residential heat pumps. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Amber Ruther. Amber.
Hello, my name is Amber Ruther. I work at Alliance for a Green Economy, and we worked hard to help win the All-Electric Building Act and the Advanced Building Codes and Standards Act. We're eager to see both of these laws and the CLCPA and the recommendations of the Climate Action Council fully implemented in New York's building and energy codes. We know they will save New Yorkers money, improve our health, create good green jobs, and mitigate the climate crisis. The CLCPA mandates the Building Code Council to implement strategies to meet our climate targets in all decisions, including this code update. But studies from RMI show that we're already far behind in meeting our climate targets. There's no way to achieve net zero emissions without electrifying almost all of our buildings, which are New York's largest source of emissions, especially because other sectors like transportation and agriculture are so hard to decarbonize. Yet we're still moving in the wrong direction by building expensive and dangerous new pipelines when our climate laws say every new building should be all electric. Delaying this mandate will only lead to more lives and dollars lost to the climate crisis. kicking the can down the road will also increase costs to people living in new buildings that will inevitably need to be retrofitted to be all electric later on, because retrofits are more expensive than designing a building to have heat pumps from the beginning. There's no reason not to implement the All Electric Building Act. Thankfully, many of the claims the fossil fuel industry has made to fearmonger about the building electrification to protect their profits are simply false. Heat pumps are reliable and resilient. They can be paired with batteries, generators, or backup heating sources like wood stoves. Modern fossil fuels furnaces require electricity to operate too, so they're not more reliable. Heat pumps also work in cold climates as far north as the Arctic Circle. There's enough grid capacity for gradual building electrification. Adopting heat pumps and thermal energy networks will actually relieve strain on our summer peaking grid in the short term because they're so much more energy efficient than air conditioners. Heat pumps are also affordable with the current incentives provided through the IRA, especially in new construction. According to a recent report, statewide, heat pumps in new construction could save families an average of $14,000 over 15 years, with even greater savings upstate of up to $3,600 a year for homes that would otherwise be on propane, and families in all climate zones would see savings. So the All Electric Building Act really does lower construction costs, not increase them. We work with many people who have installed heat pumps in their homes through our NYSERDA Energy Smart Hub, and overwhelmingly, everyone we've spoken with loved their heat pump. They say they're more comfortable, there are fewer health-harming fumes in their home, and their utility bills are usually lower, especially if they also have solar. This is by no means unprecedented or unfeasible. Many places have already banned fossil fuels in new construction, including New York City, Ithaca, Seattle, LA, Sacramento, San Jose, Washington State, and Germany. And it's working. The council has expressed some concerns about the costs of implementing these laws, but we would argue that the costs of not implementing them are far greater. The cost of climate change alone ranged from $240 to $255 billion according to the Climate Action Council. And the cost of health impacts from air pollution and climate change range from $150.
I'm now going to shut off your microphone. Thank you.
I don't know if you can hear you.
Oh, I was talking pretty loud. Okay, next one.
So Sonia Dasa. Sonia, you're on?
Okay.
There we go.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Sonia Duza. I'm a resident in Western New York, and I am going to comment on a very, very basic duty in government: code enforcement. 2 or 3 years ago, I read the State Senate Committee report, final report, and the committee is charged with investigations in government operations. Specifically, this report was code enforcement. It was published August 5th, 2019. I have been an advocate of planning, land use, code enforcement since the 60s. I was calling for code enforcement in our community on our basic protection of safety and security of our property. It never happened. In 1985, we asked to have a violation checked with. We wound up having to go to Supreme Court. Judge Vincent Doyle found for us to even get the city to follow what they had to do, follow their own basic minimal regulations law, was not happening. Till this very day, it's still not happening. This is unbelievable. Given this report, and I wish people would take a look at it, it's really it's a bad sign about New York government. I remember it being in the 50s, the Empire State. Well, we're not having the needed attention of code enforcement. That's a duty, and that's a duty that protects our safety and our security in our community. I cannot understand why this is not happening. In my area, the municipalities, mayors, elected officials, appointed building inspectors, they seem oblivious to this. I've spoken to some, they don't even know about this report. It's very concerning to me that when people go before their community and ask for this, it's not happening. The point is, this is about the safety, security of our home, our business, our quality of life. I want to know, why isn't this findings in this report? It was excellent, very comprehensive. When you read it, you know it's comprehensive, very fair, and it was about 4 municipalities dropping the ball. When I read it, I thought, when the people will see this report, they'll say, Sonia, did you write this? Because I've been commenting on what's that
Ma'am,
in
I'm
that
gonna have to
report
ask
for
you
what
to-
has to be done, and it
I have to
has
ask you to
not
stop.
still been done. I would appreciate a follow-up on a response to this. Our legislator has dropped the ball in appropriating the needed funding.
Ma'am, you're over
So
time. I'm gonna
this
have to
could
ask you to
happen.
stop.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Now we have Eric Wood.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Thanks so much for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Eric Wood, and I'm the Hudson Valley Regional Coordinator with the New York Public Interest Research Group, or NYPIRG. NYPIRG is a nonpartisan public education organization that works to examine important public policy issues, produce studies, and engage New Yorkers through public education campaigns to protect our environment and public health. Today, we call on the Building Codes Council to include building electrification for new buildings as required by the All-Electric Building Law, as well as the recommendations of the Climate Action Council Scoping Plan and the requirements of the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act in the 2024 Building Code Update. As New Yorkers were experiencing severe climate damages already, from flash flooding to more intense storms, hotter temperatures, and more pollution, the threats toward public health and safety, combined with the financial devastation that the climate crisis is causing our communities, demands immediate action. The climate crisis is currently costing New York State taxpayers billions of dollars annually. Over the next 2 decades, we're faced with the imperative to completely replace our fossil fuel infrastructure by meeting our energy demands through energy efficiency, transmission upgrades, and renewable energy production. The building sector is the largest source of greenhouse gas pollution in New York, and direct greenhouse gas emissions from the building sector come from burning fossil fuels on site in residential and commercial buildings, primarily for space and water heating. Eliminating this source of pollution will help us make huge strides in combating the climate crisis, but it will also begin saving lives immediately by first reducing firsthand exposure to fossil fuel pollution, like gas burning stoves, gas pipe leaks, carbon monoxide exposure, and more. NYPIRG demands the Building Code Council include requirements in the new codes for building electrification for new buildings as required by the All-Electric Building Law. The council must follow this new state law by including all specifications for electrifying new buildings in the new codes by the start date, including the important statutory requirement that it be required to the extent technically and physically possible, not financially. This includes the prohibition of equipment and building systems that burn fossil fuels in newly constructed buildings. Whether to include the new building electrification requirements in the new codes is not a decision that's up to the council. It is required by law. In addition, the council should follow the recommendations of the Climate Action Council and the Building Code for newly constructed buildings. Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you so much.
So do not see Louis Kuhl on our list. I will move on to Vekos Ashoka.
Hello. My name is Vikas Ashoka. I live in Beacon, New York, in the Mid-Hudson Valley. I'm calling in as a homeowner in the process of electrification, a father of a newborn, and a member of a local climate justice organization called Beacon Climate Action Now, or BCAN, a group that successfully organized to pass a local version of the All Electric Buildings Act earlier this year. I'm not going to repeat the science underscoring the urgency and importance of reducing building emissions in New York. Science is unimpeachable. Our mandate to act is clear. With that said, I mean, I do have a bit of empathy for those who are nervous about implementation about New York's climate laws. You know, we're trying to do a full-scale transformation of our economy in order to improve New Yorkers' lives and safeguard our children's future. I think about this a lot recently, having a young baby. And the mandate is too large for any individual entity, which means that we all need to do our part of the work and simultaneously trust and support other institutions and organizations in doing theirs. So in this mission, your job is twofold. First, to pass building codes that comply fully with New York's climate laws and goals. And secondly, to take into consideration the full societal and health costs associated with fossil fuels in our homes and communities, and the health and cost savings benefits of modern electric appliances, especially when paired with efficiency standards. And as you take this action, I think the main purpose of my comment today is to remind you that there are tens of thousands of advocates across New York State who are actively working to support you. As my friend Thomas Wright brought up already, in Beacon alone, Beacon Climate Action Now knocked on thousands of our neighbors' doors to talk about the health benefits, cost savings, and emissions reductions associated with building electrification. And we found that once people learned about the facts, that they were supportive of phase out of fossil fuels in new construction. That's how we were able to unanimously pass a local law that was much more ambitious than the state bill in March of this year. And so we're continuing with that struggle. For example, we're actively supporting legislation like the New York Heat Act because there's no reason for New Yorkers to subsidize the expansion of new gas lines to the benefit and profit of multinational corporate utilities. I think this appears to be something that Councilmember Bill Toon and I can agree on. And I think I just want to say, in summary, Beacon provides just one example of the work that advocates throughout the state and municipalities, big and small, are doing. The members of this council, to you all, please do your job implementing New York's climate laws. And when you do, communities across New York, we will have your back.
Thank you.
Adam Flint. Adam?
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. My name is Adam Flint. I am the Director of Clean Energy Programs at the Network for a Sustainable Tomorrow. We're a small nonprofit in the greater Binghamton area that's been focused on energy education and outreach for the last decade. We're also a founding member of the Energy Democracy Alliance, New York Renews, and are part of Renewable Heat Now, which was the principal entity pushing for the All Electric Buildings Act. I admit to a little bit of cognitive dissonance at this event. Yesterday, I was in Albany with a group of 50 young people ages 10 to 22 who held a press conference at the Capitol and delivered more than 2,000 postcards to Governor Hochul, calling on her to show true leadership by passing the New York Heat Act. They spoke of how climate change and energy burden has impacted them, including asthma, flooding, going without heat, and being hungry in order to afford to pay utility bills. We have a law on the books right now that this council is meant to comply with, and it's really your duty to send a message to our youth that you are being responsible adult leaders at a time when so few of us are able to say that. I've spent the last decade doing outreach and education as part of NYSERDA's programs to support building decarbonization, particularly in the low and moderate income and disadvantaged community areas. There's no way that New York can meet our legally binding climate goals if the state fails to decisively signal to the market that building owners and contractors need to move off of fossil fuels. Starting with new construction makes good sense for a whole slew of reasons, not least because there's cost parity and ease of design for heat pumps right now. Every new building that has a conventional system put in is lost to us for at least 15 years, and in 15 years, these children will be adults contending with the outcomes of our actions. They already have ample evidence of our failures. Please make this decision an example of success for our children's future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Juan Pablo Velez. You're unmuted, Juan.
My name is Juan Pablo Velez. I'm the executive director of a climate policy think tank called Win Climate. And I just want to kind of remind us of what we're all doing here. New York is the world's 10th biggest economy. Buildings are the top polluting sector. And you're the people with the power to decarbonize that sector or not. So along with power, arguably you have really historic responsibility. But here's what we're talking about. The standard 2 degrees of warming, we have to replace every fossil fuel machine that dies with electric versions. And that was as of 2020. And you can look at any number of studies that make this very abundantly clear. Today, we're not talking about that. In fact, we're not even talking about phasing out boiler and furnaces replacements by 2030. We're talking about doing that in just new buildings. And actually, we're not even talking about that. We're talking about you literally following the law of this state on new buildings. 2 laws, actually. This is the second one. So if you don't do the right thing and, follow the law, you can, 1, expect a legal challenge, and 2, I seriously don't understand how you look at your children and grandchildren in the eye. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's it for the list. The only one we're going to go back to and try again is Paul, because we do see you here, but we're having trouble unmuting you, so I'm going to try again now. And I know you said you were having connectivity issues. I don't have the ability to unmute you, so it must be related to that. So with that, I think we can end the comment.
Okay, is there anyone else that wants to present to the council today?
We have Hennessy Garcia raised their hand.
Yep, and they just messaged it saying I'd like to sign up last minute to test. So let me find their name.
Oh, they're unmuted.
Hello, can everyone
Yes.
hear me? Okay. Hi, Hennessy. I'm part of a 6th Street Community Center. I'm the co-facilitator of the Teen Climate Justice Program, and I'm also a member of the youth. And I just wanted to say I'm also a student. And at the moment, I'm pretty sick right now, but thought it was extremely important to be here today, especially during my final season. So if I can show up, do my job sick, fever, and all, I feel like you can show up for our communities and do your job. It is your responsibility to ensure that our building codes are in compliance with the state climate law, with the CLCPA and the All Electric Buildings Act. This is not a huge request. Someone said earlier that the hard work was done for you. The plan, to the recommendations, and of course the science was done for you, thanks to those of us who have already testified today. Literally, you just need to do your part in the complying process. I just wanted to lastly express that business as usual is delusional, especially at the expense of our communities, our lives, and our future. Thanks.
Thank you. And with that, I'm going to close public comment for today. Thank all the participants and thank the council members. That moves us to agenda item 6. Our 2024 meetings are currently scheduled for March 22nd, June 28th, September 27th, and December 6th. I have a feeling some of those may move, but for now, let's mark them on our calendars. Can you speak up a bit? Am I that quiet?
Yeah.
Okay, I was that quiet. I'll do it again. Future meetings, 2024, March 22, June 28th, September 27th, and December 6th. I have a feeling those may move, but we will we'll endeavor to stay as close as we can and make dates that work. Other business, agenda item 7. So here's where we're going to make a motion for an executive session. I move to enter into executive session to discuss our litigation strategy in relation to the case of Mulhern Gas Company, Inc. et al. Versus Robert J. Rodriguez et al. May I have a second for that motion? Mayor makes the second. All in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed? Okay, we're going to take about 10 minutes here so Kevin can get set up. We're going to suspend the meeting that we're in. He'll bring up the other meeting for the, I know our staff in New York City know how to call into that meeting. Keith, I believe you've got it as well. So we will be back in 10 minutes. We're back. We have adjourned out of executive session. That executive session, as stated in the motion earlier, discussed litigation strategy in the case of Mulhern Gas Company, Inc. et al. Versus Robert J. Rodriguez et al. That is completed for the day. So we are still in agenda item 7, which is other business. Is there any other business to come before the council today? Okay. Hearing none, then I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to thank the council members because obviously this was a long meeting and I expect that we're probably going to have some more long meetings before we get to the conclusion of this code development process, code update process. I'm going to thank the staff who I cannot express. I mean, I work with these guys every day and I still can't express to the council how much work goes into this. It is incredible how much they do, and I am very thankful to all of them. I tell them as much as I can, but it's still not enough, trust me. I'm going to thank council today for hosting our executive session and being here next to me. I appreciate everything you do. Same thing with you. Thank you, Kevin, for everything. And then I guess I'll close today with happy holidays. I hope everyone has a joyous end of the year, a joyous new year, full of great things. And I guess with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn until March 22nd, 2024. Can I have a second for that motion? Joe seconds the motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're done. We are adjourned and we are off the record.